Can you believe it? We're back for part 2 of our 9-part series on Control, where we're breaking down, discussing, and analyzing everything Control has to offer, from the main game, which we covered in our previous video, up through the 2 DLC episodes and some other bullshit. Now, we're actually going out of order right now. We're going to discuss the AWE DLC, which did release after the Foundation DLC, but it doesn't really matter. In terms of like the events of the game, you can play them in any order, and
yeah, it's up to you.
I don't think canonically it really matters very much. So we're going to cover the AWE DLC, which, any like quick first impressions, like concise statements or anything to open?
Alan Wake!
Yes.
I really did think, before I knew anything about Control, and I only knew a little bit about Alan Wake, I assumed AWE stood for Alan Wake Expansion.
That is also what I assumed.
Yeah.
It
I was like,
actually
it's
stands for
Wake.
Alan Wake's erection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fun fact. A little known
Because
fact.
he's building
He's building a lot
story. He's
of
building
sexual tension.
a
there,
lot of
down
blood
there.
in his
Frustration.
between him and himself and guys that look like him. It's very messed up. What are your first impressions?
Very hard. Huge
Yeah, this is
difficulty
This is definitely
spike.
the hardest
Huge difficulty spike.
time
Fun
I
though.
had.
Well,
yeah.
being the final DLC, you know, they're kind of, I think, banking on the idea that you'd be pretty well equipped for it at
Yeah.
this point. And so if you're playing the AWE DLC first, I could definitely see not being totally leveled up to the point where it wouldn't be really frustrating. The first time I hit those like flying Hiss Rangers, I just got wrecked. I stopped playing and was like, well, I gotta just go back and level up.
I had to inevitably just go back and respec a little bit and be like,
Yeah.
okay, I guess I need to put a little more into energy because I was
Yeah.
focusing way too much on getting my kinesis way too high up.
Yeah, there's a lot of times that I have to swap out something offensive for like just giving me more health, just to be able to survive a little bit longer. Yeah, those Rangers, I like that. There was a couple like, well, maybe there were just, there was a couple in this expansion, or DLC, there was a couple Hiss that grew the ability to levitate. And it was interesting in the documentation, it was like, we don't really know why. It seems like maybe they can evolve powers, but they're stronger now. And you got to deal with it.
That was the other thing, is it seemed like just about everybody you ran into was at least like had an 8 or 9 above their head.
That's right.
Which was like substantially higher than what you've been coming up against until that point. For me at least.
Wow, I kind of forgot about that. The level system that was very just basic and useful.
Yeah, well then you know,
like
okay, I gotta
higher
throw a
number.
vending machine at this guy instead of punching him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
but it's not like there's not 60 levels. I never saw anybody above like a 14. I
I think
think
20 is the highest.
20.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's easy. I like that.
You,
Keep
you,
it like
you
that.
encounter 20s, I think, in the jukebox excursions.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that must be brutal.
Yeah, it's I played through all of them on my most recent playthrough, where
Oh, the
I had
jukebox,
the
not Shum.
yes, through the jukebox.
Oh, okay. I played through those. Yeah.
I had the assist mode turned on for my last playthrough, and so because on my first playthrough I couldn't finish all of the jukebox excursions. They get progressively harder.
Okay.
And by like the second or third time through, it was just like way too much for me.
Yeah.
I think I played through those maybe at the end of doing the AWE, and I didn't smoke it, but I made it through each one without dying. But it got close, especially that last one. I was hoping there was more. I thought that, you get a really cool. That was the only outfit that I found in the game aside from the default one and the golden suit that I liked. It was the expedition suit or something, and it kind of looks like you're a ranger. I was like,
Okay.
that was pretty sick.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of other costumes that were like exclusive or like hidden.
I like running around in my sweats. Prime Candidate 7.
Makes me feel better about running around in my sweats.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
I'm
I'm
playing
like,
the game.
I'm just a lazy pile. She's the director. She
Yeah.
just looks like a lazy pile. That's all right.
That like destroyed my immersion because I was
Yeah.
like, why would Jessie put that on? Like in the janitor's clothes. Like, why would she put that on?
Why would she put anything on?
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know. She's wearing what she's wearing. I was just like, it was just strange to me.
Well, if she was wearing the sweats, it wouldn't be like an option she made in that scenario.
What do you mean?
Because she's wearing Prime Candidate 7 sweats.
Yeah.
So I understand, like, I chose to switch into them, But in the scenario where she would have had those sweats, it wouldn't have been her option to be wearing them.
Yeah, that kind of would have been her prison jumpsuit, so to
Yeah.
speak. But hey, we
Anyway.
could talk about girls dressing up all fucking day. Let's talk about the fucking expansion. Basically, the way the game works is you go to the sector elevator, and there's different sectors, different floors, and that's where kind of like each of the larger maps in the game are. And at one point in the game, you do have to eventually kind of like hit a certain point in the story before this will happen.
Yeah.
But you'll get what seems like a hotline call from Alan Wake alerting you of the presence of a new button on the elevator unveiling the abandoned investigation sector.
Spooky.
So there's a few things that lead into this in the game. There's like in Control, especially in the documents that you can find. In particular, the ones relating to AWEs, like they mention like probably Alan by name. They mentioned Bright Falls. They talk about the stuff that happens there.
There's a handful. You find like the typewriter page.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
You find documentation on the thermoses.
Yes.
And you do find at least one or two mentions of the Bright Falls AWE. And when you
Yeah.
do find the typewriter page in the Panopticon, you also get like a vision, a hotline call style vision of Alan Wake.
That was so sick. Like even though I'm saying that there's no questioning that there was Alan Wake in this game. Like obviously I am aware of it as, you know, we're exploring Remedy games and everything, but even still, when I got to that, in particular the Panopticon, and then the first time that I began the AWE DLC, like I don't know, I was just like, oh shit! Like I got like really excited. I was like,
Started like pumping up.
I started doing this. I was like, oh,
Blocking
it's
your
Alan
blocking your
Shia LaBeouf.
yeah, I was doing this.
Do
Shia
it!
LaBeouf. I fell out of my chair and I started crying and shaking. And I said, "It's Alan Wake!" And I woke up my neighbors. But yeah, it was cool. It was exciting, and he looks so like you know, like graphics have gotten 10 years better.
And he's 10 years older.
Yeah.
Was he old? Oh yeah, he would
Yeah,
be
for
older,
sure.
wouldn't he?
Yeah, he'd be 10 years older. Yeah, he
Yeah.
looked 10 years older too. I would imagine it's because also the actor who plays him aged. You know,
They
as
could not
time
find
works.
a way to keep him the same age as he was in 2010. They tried, but yeah.
I'm
it was
glad they're
sick. I was
aging him and
super-
saying he's in there for 10 years because, like, you know, it's really common nowadays to de-age actors in big movies and stuff. And
Yeah.
it'd be so easy to do that in a video game where you're largely dealing with 3D models anyway.
But it's like you said, you mentioned too that Remedy. It seems as though all of their games take place in the year that they're released.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, largely,
it's nice
yeah.
that they're holding on to the timeline. you
What
know.
an endeavor.
Well, yeah, but
be hard.
it's a the whole thing seems like an endeavor for them keeping all these stories connected. So it
Yeah.
seems like clearly they're
What's funny is that, you know, I think as early as 2012, they had a prototype of Alan Wake 2, and then they're like, well, that didn't work out. We'll do it again someday. And now if they're working on Alan Wake 2, it's just amusing to me that they're like, well, it was going to be 3 or 4 years after, but maybe it's 12 years after.
Yeah, maybe we have to scrap
Yeah.
the whole idea. And
I mean, yeah, that can just add severity and weight to the situation. Because, like, oh my God, he's
absolutely.
been there. And then, like, Alice is living this entirely new life.
Probably add some
like-
weight to the character, too. As you age, you tend to put on a few pounds.
It's on a few
But hey,
pounds.
we could go on and on about all the weight gained by Alan Wake in the Dark Place. Let's talk about the DLC. So you get, and so where were you going with this? To just like that there were some references to Alan Wake before.
Yeah,
DLC
and
began.
specifically when you go on the Panopticon and have that vision of him, it was just really cool, and I was very it set the stage, and I was very excited to finally get there.
So I believe we're playing the Ultimate Edition of the game, which
Yes.
came with a bunch of like quality of life upgrades, and also came with the DLCs, installed already. But at launch, people would have been finding these things and been like, "Oh, that's cool!" Like Alan Wake Easter eggs, not entirely knowing that it was gonna like really fully connect.
Yeah,
like
actually
that,
be fully
like
realized,
they've
yeah.
always done. They being Remedy have always done some degree of Easter eggs and references and links between their games, but it's never been this explicit or this grand.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like comparing it to like something like our boy Duke Nukem and some of the Easter
He's
eggs.
not my
you can-
boy. That guy's a misogynist piece of shit, and I hate him.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I'm not going to get canceled for liking Duke Nukem.
All right. You're probably right. I think I agree. I believe there's like Easter eggs where you can find Commander Keen, which is another one of their games. Like his helmet is somewhere, and it's like, oh, it's that. Or yeah, I don't know, just like something more basic, just like some sort of throwback in Fallout to like an older game. Like
no, I hear you.
Harold. Think about Harold. He was in Fallout 2.
And there's connections between
3.
Fallout and Skyrim even.
Yeah, but even those are kind of loose, and it's more just like a remember the thing.
Well, I think that's the difference between an Easter egg, which is just like a fun little reference,
Yeah.
like, going back to the history of Easter eggs in video games, fun little secret things to discover that when you go, oh, neat.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a thing that makes you go, hey, that's kind of cool.
Right.
Anyway, back onto the game. Rarely do they have deeper significance or consequences.
Yeah, generally it's not a literal entire connected universe that
Yeah.
that functions.
Which is, I think
You know
that
what I
just makes it so much more cool.
The only
Not that
people.
it needs to be, but it's awesome that they could do that. Yeah.
Truly. And the only people I know that do that are it's Rockstar. They've found ways to connect most of their games as well.
Wait a minute, Matt. Didn't Rockstar help make Max Payne 3, which was a Remedy independent property? Intellectual
What
property?
the fuck are you talking about?
Didn't Rockstar Games make Max Payne 3, which
Yes.
was a game that was originally the franchise that was originally created by Remedy Studios?
That's probably the best way to put it. Yeah.
Wow. So we got the two top dogs on it, and it's pretty cool. But we could be talking about Easter eggs all day. Why don't we talk about the DLC?
So it was fucking crazy that the first time you see Alan Wake, introduce the sector elevator to you, the new button on the sector elevator, he's narrating Jesse's reaction and movements, and he's also, as this third-person narrator, like, the same role he took on in the Departure manuscript in the game Alan Wake, he's able to also see kind of inside of her mind, and he knows about Polaris as well.
Yes.
And he mentions that, he is kind of tugging at her,
Yeah.
trying to get her to check out this elevator, and he is sending a distress call, but that Polaris understands that this is not like the hiss. Like this, like even though he is being somewhat invasive, it's not hostile at all, and they don't see him as any kind of threat. And so, like, I think they mentioned that it's not so much helping Alan that motivates Jesse, but more investigating this abandoned sector.
Yeah.
It's more her duty as director, it seems, that is her motivation.
Which really plays into the whole like understanding that we have, or that Alan has, of how he can. What was the phrase they used for you have to like authentically create or something like that?
Yeah, basically.
And it really like encapsulates how he wasn't telling her or just writing a story. Jesse walked into the room. It was more
Jesse
like,
saved Alan Wake. Yes, I did it.
there's like
Finally.
a 1,000 like pages and like a trash can behind him where he's like, huh? Well, like he writes it like, oh, yeah, God damn it, Alice. But that's another way that they've maintained that working order.
Yeah. So basically, the investigation sector, to give a little bit of a quick sort of synopsis, the investigation sector investigates. They investigate AWEs, they investigate altered items and objects, but they also have full oversight authority over the entire FBC, including the director. So they have a series, of internal investigations as well.
Yes.
Which caused a lot of tension, especially as we, drew closer and closer to Director Trench being corrupted by the hiss and becoming more paranoid in general.
More aggressive.
Yeah, having like an actual like oversight committee over someone who's already paranoid, thinking everyone's watching them anyway, is not a good mix. So essentially what happened is after the Bright Falls AWE, that was back in 2011, I believe, 2010. They were aware of it, and they were kind of keeping an eye on things and investigating, and over time they were able to find out that Dr. Emil Hartman violated the ASH Act, which is an act, a law essentially put in place by the FBC that if you're violating or taking advantage of paranatural entities or situations or whatever, like that's illegal in their eyes. You know, it's almost like a secret crime. And by essentially kidnapping people
Yeah.
and forcing them to engage in paranatural activities,
So that
Yeah.
he could shape reality to serve him.
yeah,
You know?
he is definitely in violation of the Ash Act. So what initially happened was they brought him in for questioning, and he was trying to share his knowledge. He saw himself as a peer of the FBC.
He viewed it as he had gathered a bunch of research for them effectively for free on his, like, he footed the bill, you know what I mean, for them. So they should be grateful that he's brought all of this to them.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this whole thing was like the greatest. I hated Hartman so much playing through Alan Wake. This
Yeah.
was like so much like, it was so justified. I was like, thank God,
Such an
finally
ass.
some justice, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, yeah.
There's interviews that you can find or interrogations better between Hartman and some agents, and like they don't like tolerate his bullshit. And you're just
No.
like, yes.
He's telling them, "Oh, I'm an important man with important connections." They're like, "All right, whatever, you know, that's
Go to
fine."
jail.
Yeah,
So what happens is that they confiscate all of his research
yeah.
and let him go. So they're like, well, he's not really a threat anymore, you know.
And they strip him of his medical license as well, so he
right.
can't practice
Yeah.
at all anymore.
Which is probably for the better.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But
So after he gets everything confiscated, he's kind of like at rock bottom, and he's like, well, you know, I have nothing left. I've seen other people go into the dark place. I've seen other people dive into Cauldron Lake.
Yeah.
He believes himself to be better equipped for it than anyone else. He thinks that it just shows how cocky he is, because as much as he writes about, you know, the creator's dilemma, and he has this whole like you know, philosophy around the creative process, he's not really a creative individual himself.
no, not at all. That's why he exploits these creative people and does what he uses. He's like, the reason I feel like he uses these paranatural abilities to create successes for himself is because he's tried and failed in so many other ways, I'd imagine, throughout his life. You know what I mean? He
Yeah.
just has this desire to be these people that he's effectively kidnapping, you know what I mean, and taking advantage of. And so he feels like a god almost, I'm sure, by the time we get to the point that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
it seems like he also has this messiah complex with the darkness, where he like sees how he perceives the darkness or the dark place is like this kind of god that he is pleased, and that he will rise as his champion. The darkness will rise Hartman as his champion.
well, it's funny because he knows that the dark place and you know, speaking of the dark place, that is like Cauldron Lake is a portal to that, basically, is our understanding.
Yes.
And within that, you know, acts of pure creation can alter or influence reality. And he knows that it's based on creativity. So it's interesting that he's so delusional that he seems to be like not understanding his lack of creativity.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll be better equipped than Tom, Zane, or Alan Wake when I go in there.
Yeah.
And he comes out a monster.
Yeah.
Like a pretty terrifying monster at that too.
Well, there's
Right.
there's
Well,
something
that's-
to that.
that's true too, because I apologize.
We'll get to it. But
So-
yeah, he did. We'll get to it. But yeah, he did emerge a monster, and then
Yeah.
Was captured.
another thing happened.
He was captured by the FBC and brought in and was detained there. And, you know, while this is going on, so we have the head of investigations, William Kirkland, who was first introduced all the way back in 2012 in the Alan Wake comic books.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sheriff Sarah Breaker's father, Frank Breaker,
Yep.
when everything was going down at the end of Alan Wake, when you're making your way to
The light.
the
electricity?
what's that room called? The bright room.
The
well-lit room.
well-lit room. Yes, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. when you're making your way to the well-lit room, you're at the police station, and Breaker's like, hey, Barry, I need you to call all these people. Well, one of the people that Barry calls is Sheriff Breaker's father, Frank Breaker. And Frank goes, oh, okay, I see what's going on. So he calls William Kirkland at the FBC. And we find that Frank Breaker was a former FBC agent, has since
Yes.
retired.
Which was so. I remember when we were doing the Alan Wake. Yes, I've played, or yeah, I've played. That we were talking about that, and we were talking about how Sarah Breaker mentioned that her dad was part of some sort of little local group, but it seemed like a local thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
really that big a deal. And I remember us being like, there's something more going on here. He's clearly part of some sort of, you know what I mean, entity that's larger than this, you know what I mean? Like, or they are in general, all these people they've called.
And it's kind of been made clear to me that Breaker herself, Sarah Breaker, didn't really understand entirely what that was.
No.
Because one thing that we find out in the Alan Wake remaster is in Sheriff Breaker's office, you find a piece of mail from the office of William Kirkland at the FBC addressed to Frank Breaker. And a little post-it note on it says, like, ask Dad what this is or whatever.
Oh, yeah?
And so, like,
Yeah, she's
there's
in the
something
dark
there.
about it.
I don't know if she opened the mail. I mean, that would be a federal offense. So, especially opening mail from a federal agency. Maybe it's a double federal offense.
Well, she's a law enforcement officer, so she's above the law.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, she did
forget
shoot
that.
a bunch of people.
Yeah, she did potentially murder a bunch of people who she swore to protect.
Yes. Well, anyway,
to say?
William Kirkland is the head of investigations. He is there for, I don't know when he came into power there, but it's a whole big sector of the FBC that has been sealed off. And so as we go in, you find just a shitload of documents that it's kind of overwhelming. Like when
is.
I first started the DLC, I was like, wow, there's like 15 or 20 documents like right off the bat.
And like the
As
first room.
soon as you enter the investigations department,
Yeah.
you're just inundated.
And it's just like it's power's been disconnected. It's like
Yep.
pitch black. Everything's knocked over. It's clear that like no one's been here and it's a wreck.
Yeah.
And basically the story that you piece together is that Kirkland was very skeptical of the Prime Candidate program. He thought it was illegal and unethical.
Yes.
And he was also becoming increasingly skeptical of Trench.
Yes.
And Darling
Yeah,
alike.
and it
Well, I
seemed
mean,
like-
yeah, well, Darling was the one kind of pushing for the Prime Candidate program as well.
And kind of feeding into Trench a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah.
As far as going into the projector slides and stuff like that, and
Yeah. So that Kirkland felt that they were violating the Ash Act regularly,
Yeah.
and not only that, but also violating just basic ethical imperatives. You know?
human rights
Yeah.
violations. Yeah.
And just as a quick note, we'll get more into this into the Foundation DLC, but Ash is a person that was a former head of research. And you learn a lot more about him and his son in the Foundation DLC, which is cool that it's not just like a name, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you learn a lot about, there's like a lot of history there.
There's a long history there, and it's nice that it comes in layers like this. But
Yeah.
essentially, after the FBC detained the shadow-fied version of Hartman, the taken Hartman, he was held in the investigation sector rather than in the Panopticon.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of tension there, being like Trench being like, you shouldn't keep this monster in investigations. This isn't like how we do things.
Yes.
And Kirkland, for whatever reason, felt differently.
Yeah.
And
it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
How insistent he was that they keep Hartman there.
Yeah, it was very strange, but also Kirkland was investigating Dr. Darling for mistreating paranatural entities.
That's right.
So maybe he
Fair.
felt that if he were placed elsewhere, because they brought him under his watch, like maybe he
Yeah.
felt some sort of responsibility, even though Hartman is a monster to us because we know about the Taken, we know, we've seen Alan Wake's entire journey. They don't know. They're trying to
Yeah.
investigate
Yeah.
this third person, so they just see this paranatural entity that they've detained.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel it's right to abuse it, and he knows
Fair.
that it is going to be possibly subject to abuse.
Because it's a checks and balance system that they have in place, which I think is super important because as you learn from like Langston talking about how you can please and kind of pacify altered items that may become, very violent and dangerous, you kind of have to extend that to any sort of like conscious being or entity because they do have that same power and like it's just as important to keep them in check if you can figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, and there would be some degree of humanity left in Hartman that they would recognize. Like he
Yeah.
would speak and stuff, So eventually what happens is in 2017, Alice Wake is brought in for questioning. And that line of questioning, they're talking about the AWE in Bright Falls. They're talking about, she mentions basically like her sightings of Mr. Scratch.
Yep.
Everything that we would come to expect from, what we know through Alan Wake and American Nightmare, it all checks out. But this somehow like wakes something up in Hartman, and he goes crazy and escapes his cell.
Dun dun dun.
And he's become very powerful, and he basically wrecks the fucking investigation sector.
Yeah.
They close the fire break,
Yeah.
locking agents inside with him. And then they seal off the sector. So Trench says, their blood is on your hands, Kirkland. This is your fault.
Yeah.
Kirkland doesn't agree that it's his fault. But he thinks that Trench has gone insane, and in early 2019, he resigns. And he's out. And then everything happens in the game where, Jesse comes in, Zachariah Trench has killed himself, all this shit. But now you basically have this this sector that's been sealed off, relatively recently sealed off, a couple years now. But that's a couple years that Hartman's just been prowling in the shadows there, waiting for something.
And another noteworthy thing that I don't believe we've mentioned, he becomes corrupted as well in his shadowed form by the Hiss.
Yeah.
Right, and that's so Alan Wake refers to that as the third thing. He
okay.
was Hartman,
Yes,
then he was the taken Hartman, then he becomes this third thing, which is, they mentioned that Hartman, being the taken version of Hartman, being so far from the lake and from the source of, the dark power there, is not necessarily like weak, but it's because the connection to his source is weak. He just welcomes in the Hiss and like doesn't fight it. Like they mentioned, like he mentions like he could have fought it off, but he just lets the Hiss corruption happen to him, and he becomes this horrific beast.
Like you were saying earlier, his design is scary.
Oh, it's genuinely like this was like survival horror level. Like, you know what I mean? What's that guy's name? Not Hideo Kojima, but I mean even that level, like Silent Hill level, weird creatures. You know what I mean? Just terrifying, really like body horror style kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Particularly the fact that one of his legs is just like almost like a peg leg. It's like a point, and he scrapes it on the ground when he walks.
And he has his rib cage is reversed and coming out of his back.
Yep.
Which kind of looks like deer antlers.
Yeah.
Which has some interesting ties to Bright Falls.
And so they mentioned that he's just become impossibly stretched.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of, in the opening lines of the Hiss incantation, the poem, they say like a worm through time, and it's a very similar imagery. And so essentially,
those are all things, sorry to cut you off, those are all things that Hartman yells as well. He'll say like it's incoherent.
He's yelling the Hiss incantation.
But he will say the third thing, and then he says, Hartman was stretched. Trust me, because I had to do the boss fight a lot. We'll get to that. But yeah, wow.
But here's the thing. We'll get into all that. What you realize is that in this investigation sector, similar to the ordinary AWE sector, where they brought in the dump and they also made like a recreation of the entire town, they have also kind of brought in large altered items from altered world events and given them their own huge like warehouse style wings. So there's the Fermaro AWE and the Eagle Limited AWE, the two AWEs that you also investigate before you get to the Bright Falls AWE in this investigation sector. So real quick, the Eagle Limited AWE, this happened in 2015. There was a paracriminal group called the Midwest Organization that wanted to do something where they were going to make an altered item out of a train.
Yes.
And in order to do that, they derailed the train, killing 62 people. The FBC was tipped off to this ahead of time, and so they were there on the scene to detain people and to, apprehend the item, which is a train car, but they were not able to prevent anything from happening. The second one, the Fermaro AWE DLC, is basically there was Apollo 14, which happened back in 1971. It was a lunar mission. An alien, I'm saying alien, but a paranatural entity of some sort was able to get into the lunar vehicle and assimilate itself like as a human being and somehow control perception of everyone on the mission to be like, oh yeah, that guy's here. Of course, he was
He's
always
been here the whole
Like,
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
they don't remember him.
And
It's like,
they can't name him.
but they don't even find it strange that they can't.
He effectively makes himself just so unnoteworthy that they don't really even acknowledge that he's there. But if you mention it, they're like, oh yeah, he's always
Like that guy.
He's
Yeah.
always been there.
Who is he? They're like,
There was 3 astronauts and 4 came back, and he was this entity was apprehended
Yeah.
as well. So
who you can interact with.
well, yeah, let's get into it. So the train car.
Yeah.
Did you guys figure out this puzzle?
I did.
I did, yeah. It took me probably 2-3 tries, but it was mostly
Yeah.
just I understood the puzzle pretty quickly. It was just actually trying to figure out the order of events.
Yeah. So you get into the train. Excuse me. You get into the train car, and there's objects on each of the. It's just one car, and it looks like it's maybe more so of a dining car.
It looks like a dining car. There's
Yeah.
tables set up. It seems as though, you know what I mean, there's food. There,
And
you
on
know.
each of, not each of, but spaced among the tables, there's different items like there was like a plate indicating like food. And there's a violin.
There's a
talking about
briefcase,
music.
a violin, a
Conductor
plate,
hat.
conductor hat, and then like a pile of broken gears.
Yeah,
and
there's some
metal.
debris.
Yeah, uh-huh.
And when you interact with them, it kind of Jesse hears. When you interact with them, Jesse hears like an audio clip of those items. It's like you'll hear like tickets please, have your tickets out.
Effectively,
stuff like that.
each item plays out a section
Of
of
that
the
night.
series of events of the train car crashing, effectively, and being transformed.
And it's up to you
yeah.
to put them in the correct sequence.
And yeah, and so when you interact with them in the correct sequence, you kind of cleanse. It's basically like ghosts. It's like a ghost
Yeah.
train.
Yeah.
It makes it seem like that because once you do finish and quote unquote cleanse it, as she leaves, she's like, well, hopefully all that chaos is over for them now.
Yeah.
Because she mentions that when she walks in, if you don't get it on the first try and you leave the car and then re-enter again, I noticed when you leave, she goes, wow, that was chaos.
Oh yeah, she
You know what I
was,
mean?
yeah.
She's like, that was
I did as well.
chaotic.
Yeah, I imagine like in some way the spirit or memory of those people is trapped in there, just constantly reliving.
Yeah, because they don't
derailment.
understand, and we obviously don't, because it's not a real thing. But they don't understand
What
in
the
the
hell
in the
happened?
game how like something like that is affected when you create an alternate item
Mm-hmm.
purposely. You know what I mean? They don't understand anything around that. Neither did the group that did it, and so I think that's another interesting thing. But we'll get into that after.
It was
Yeah.
bizarrely somber. Like I do remember feeling like, wow, like more so than just hearing about people getting killed from different AWEs or thresholds opening up. It was just like, oh man, this sucks. I feel like you were like actually relive that experience, even though there's no real visual aspect. It is just kind of all audio.
Yeah.
But that was cool.
Yeah. And the other AWE, the Fermoro AWE, you find that they apprehended this astronaut entity.
Then the entity like. It didn't take human form, really. It doesn't look like a human, but it put on an exosuit.
Yeah,
Like
well,
a spacesuit.
yeah, like an astronaut's.
It took the form of
Uniform.
the astronaut suit.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like it saw what the other ones looked like and was like, I'll do that. So you find that he is in a cell, and you can speak to him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of. You can kind of speak to
You
him.
can kind of speak to
You can
him.
say words to each other.
Yeah, so he speaks in
Not much more.
in gibberish, basically. Doesn't use any. Anytime he uses a noun, it's just
Wild card.
Yeah, you have no idea what's going to
They describe it as he's speaking English but it's completely useless in one of the things I read, one of the articles that they had. But it wouldn't matter that he could speak English because he can't string together a coherent sentence.
Yeah.
And
But
not
it's
just-
coherent to him.
It is, because you can hear his tones changed. You know what I mean? And you can kind of follow a little bit at a couple times what he's trying to say.
Yeah, you're
but
right.
he gets frustrated with you.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm saying this.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're still saying nothing to me.
right.
The whole time.
And so he's basically trying to get you to bring him a certain item, and you're like, okay, I think I know what he wants. And so you are then tasked with going around the investigation sector trying to find this item. Eventually, of course, it's the item. One of the first things you find when you walk into this sector
Walks
is
right by it.
a big ass astronaut helmet.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait a minute. Oh yeah.
Because he keeps saying something about the head. The head.
Yes,
I
the
need
head.
the head. And you're like, what the fuck does that mean? Because nothing else he says makes any sense. So you don't make a direct connection as myself or as Jesse, you know what I mean? You're not like, oh, I'm looking for a head.
Yeah.
You're like, God knows what I'm looking for.
Yeah, because
for this
he
thing.
calls he calls Kirkland like the chief gerbil or something.
Yeah,
He
Chief
calls-
Gerbil.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that was sick.
That was funny.
You know, so every time he speaks, you're like, maybe this, maybe that. No. But yeah, eventually you bring him his fucking head, and he's like, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying like, I'm content. I'm good in this cell for the time being. I don't mind being here.
Yeah.
You know, who understands what his perception of time or space really even is?
No.
So.
And I think that's based off of an old creepypasta, from what I could remember. My memory's a little bit foggy on it, but it's just an old one of those spooky stories from space that are 100% true and will make you pee your pants, like that kind of thing. So I thought that was interesting too, to just have that little
There was a lot of this.
it's almost like a
experience.
cameo, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, or something.
There's a lot of when I was playing through that I was like, man, like this is very familiar. And granted, like the idea of an alien intercepting a space thing is common, but there was something. It felt more specific, and I was like, this. I feel like I've read this or experienced this in some way.
It's because you had.
But
Initially, it
there's
reminded
that
me of,
cool control spin on it.
It reminded me of Venom. Like,
Oh yeah, like a symbiote.
Yeah, because like what happens in one of Venom's origin stories is basically they are on a similar mission, and the symbiote kind of just gets inside the suit and bonds with one of the astronauts, and is then when they land on Earth, he's like, cool, I'm in.
Well,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Reagan administration, they wanted to put Spider-Man on the moon.
Yeah.
There was a cool like promo thing they were doing, and they got him up there, and then that's when it happened.
So those are the two like main AWEs you investigate as you make your way to the Bright Falls AWE.
Which
And-
was initially blocked off.
Yeah, there's like these large turnstiles that you have to like operate.
They
Yeah,
love
they're
the
big-
turnstiles.
They're rotundas, yeah.
They love them so much. There was one in Alan Wake, and there's 3 or 5, I think, in Control.
Yeah, at least 3.
Am I right?
And
I don't know.
he's just shitting his pants over here.
It sounded like you had a big rumble fart.
No, it's just my body.
Okay.
Farts come from your body.
That's
Not
what
mine.
we all do.
I have a threshold in my asshole, and it goes straight to a horrible dimension.
So, the thing I noticed right away was this is definitely more horror themed.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was. Oh man, we didn't even talk about how like literally there's we mentioned it briefly. Like you have to carry around light sources and destroy darkness.
Yes.
Like just like you did in Alan Wake.
Well, I was gonna get to that.
Yeah, I figured we
Well,
would inevitably reach that
As we
point.
get to the point where we're talking about the AWE part,
I
the-
jumped the gun.
the Bright Falls. So, so when you are as you're making your way to the Bright Falls AWE, the weird goopy darkness like tar, oil slick kind of black stuff from Alan Wake.
Which also reminds me a little bit of Venom as well.
Yeah.
It looks kind of like the symbiote.
Yeah, for sure. It's all over the place down in the
Yeah.
investigation sector. Of course, it's because, not to get too graphic, but when someone is taken by the Dark Presence, they have severe anal leakage, and that's what that is. That's why you found it all over the
right
place
out.
in Alan
Just
Wake.
all the darkness pouring out of him.
Yeah, it's basically, it's Dr. Hartman's excrement.
Yeah, he's just leaving it. He covers it with doors. And you actually get a side quest from the voice of Auti to go clean out all of that.
Yeah,
darkness.
you get several missions from Ati as continuing your role as the assistant to the janitor.
you're a cisgendered janitor.
You need to clear out the darkness, which actually took me a while to find some of them.
That one actually got me. Specifically, there was one in the Fra Mauro AWE, like that main warehouse room that like it wasn't super hidden, but I just didn't find it for so long.
Yeah, there's one like it was kind of like tucked in a dark corner. Kinda.
I thought they were hidden well. It did feel like I was actually looking for it.
And then you also had to sing to a bunch of plants to bring them back to life.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I skipped over those. Like I said, I skipped over most of the side missions, aside from the Frau Maurer one I did, just because that was interesting to me.
How did you not?
And I was like, I kind of got to talk to this guy in the cell.
I skipped it at first. I went back to it after I completed everything.
And I almost did the chain letter that you find.
That was
Did you
fun.
guys find the
I
chain
did
letter?
that one, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that was
almost
fun.
did that one, but then I was
cool.
like, nah, I had too much momentum going towards,
I will
That was
say
a funny ending.
the side missions in this one, for as horror themed and as intense as the rest of the AWE DLC is, all the side missions are goofy as hell.
Yeah.
which is probably on purpose. You know what I mean? To kind of give you a little bit, because the rest of the game really isn't that scary.
Well, I also read a lot on Reddit about different jelking techniques, but when I wasn't reading about that, I was also reading like a lot of people did not like the tonal shift in this AWE DLC.
Really?
Yeah.
To horror?
And a lot of people also, which I don't want to get into just yet, but a lot of people were mad as hell about their interpretation of the connection between Alan Wake and Jesse. Which I want to get into at the end of this, but
I want to save you
Okay.
a little
Because I'm curious as to why they're upset.
I do want to know that as well. I want to save you a little bumper because earlier you mentioned in the AWE, one of the AT missions is you have to sing to the plants to revive them. In the AWE, you have to use the flashlight to grow them back. But one of the original missions in the main game, that's where you sing to them.
Okay.
Sorry, everybody.
Right, that's true. That's true.
That
You
was
used the lamp.
wrong.
That was a small detail that I didn't think was a big deal, but we'll get a lot of Reddit comments if we don't mention that.
Thank you.
It's the kind of engagement we need.
Actually, you didn't even fucking sing at all. That was a really cute mission. We didn't mention that in the main game.
Oh, we didn't
I
get really into any of the side missions.
I liked singing to the plants.
But
It was nice.
honestly, our last session got cut short, so maybe there's a few things we'll address throughout this video that we didn't yesterday.
It's true.
But when you finally get to the Bright Falls AWE section, as you're progressing, you're finding all sorts of audio logs from Dr. Hartman talking about the Dark Place. You also, I think, in this section, find an audio log from an Agent Fisher who was stationed in the Ocean View Motel and was tasked with photographing it and trying to figure out, like, they thought there were some entities in the hotel that couldn't figure it out. They don't, because the FBC is still very confused about the nature of the hotel.
But even more so when it first appeared back then.
Yeah, and so they had him there, and it seems like he was attacked by some sort of entity. It's left very unclear. So you're getting more and more little bits of information about it, but all of it is, for the most part, tense and gloomy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I liked the little comic relief because that felt very Alan Wake to me. Because Alan Wake is I keep saying somber, but it's a very somber experience. Like you're trying to save your wife, who you think
Yeah,
has
but
a
it's also
is a
you have
kidnapper,
the little comedic
lot of
breaks.
goofiness.
You have the Barry
got
rolling out. You know what I
Tor
mean?
Anderson. It's fucking
Yeah.
great. Yeah. So like that.
Yeah, when he fucking caves that woman's head in.
When he
that was
absolutely
sick.
bashes her
Hilarious.
skull
Yeah,
in.
it's pretty cool.
God,
He
so
says-
funny.
He says "skull, brother," and he cracks her skull in. But that felt very Alan Wakey. It didn't strike me as strange, so I'm interested to hear what the Reddit fans thought.
Well, and people just thought that the Control's not a horror game, and this was a weird shift.
Are you telling me that Control? It's not a horror game, and I don't know if Alan Wake is either.
It's not, but people think Alan Wake is a horror game, and also you
I
got to
do see
admit
that. I
that they
see that a
definitely
lot.
went more horror with this than Alan Wake did. Even as much-
absolutely, yeah.
Alan Wake
Yeah.
is a psychological thriller.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of tension and a lot of like darkness and tense moments.
scary,
but it's
yeah,
not
but, like-
necessarily like a horror themed thing. Where this is like the monster lurks in the shadows.
No, I like noted specifically where I was like, this is the scariest section of Alan Wake or Control. You know what I mean? Period. Like, this is the scariest part. And I love horror games also, admittedly, so this wasn't like an unwelcome thing for me. But I guess I can see how you'd be kind of annoyed by the tonal shift, or maybe, but...
Yeah, if you were a big stink-ass baby.
Yeah, basically, if you're a big, sensitive baby who can't have any new things brought into their
it's
life.
very interesting to me.
Because it didn't change the whole narrative of the story. Everything still stayed in line.
Yeah.
Well, again,
Spooky.
It could have changed the entire narrative of the story if you misinterpreted some of the end events of the game. But let's get further and further into this. So you eventually do, as you're going through this investigation sector, 3 times, God damn it, you fight Dr. Emil Hartman, and he's a little more powerful and a little scarier each time.
It's true.
So one small question I had for you guys. Did you go left or right first when you first came into the AWE area? Because I believe it's up to you whether you go to the Frau Mauer or the...
Eagle.
Eagle.
I did the train one second.
You did the train one second? Okay, I did the opposite. I did the Eagles first and then went to Frau Mauer.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was just a curiosity thing.
So
Yeah.
I do think we are better than you for that choice.
No, because I found that it would have made more sense to do it the way that Matt did it, I think, where you go
Really?
to Frau Mauer first. Frau Mauer was the less difficult fight, I thought, out of the first 2. Obviously, the Bright Falls is the hardest. But I feel like I might have been more well-equipped for the Eagle fight. Because there was a good dozen times. I was, oof.
The
I got
most
to
difficult boss fights for sure. It was the only boss fights in the game where you weren't fighting a mostly stationary character.
Yeah. And he didn't really have... He had... His movements and his attacks were semi-predictable, but also the timing was always different.
Yeah.
You know, and you always knew, okay, he's going to do this, this, and this, but when it would happen was always where you were like, fuck.
I have a question about this, because
Yes.
when you go into these battles, you can also... I believe it's in the DLCs, in both DLCs.
And not in the core game.
Yeah, you can summon rangers.
Yes.
To your area.
But only on 2 or 3 occasions.
Right. It's not very often, but
No.
it's usually right before going into a boss battle or going into an area where there's going to be a lot of enemies. Now, I think there's an achievement in the game where you need to, like, if you can, you get like a achievement if a ranger takes out like 5 enemies or something.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have any luck with these rangers. They were completely useless to me.
Yeah.
I couldn't get them to take out even a single enemy.
They were a little bit helpful in distracting, like, the levitating enemies. You know what I mean? Because you get a handful of them.
They would sometimes,
yeah.
but did you find that they actually killed anything? I couldn't fucking...
Not that I
They got some killing blows.
Yeah.
On enemies that I did.
That's what I
damage
mean.
to.
Like, for sure, I nearly killed a couple that they then shot the final shot or 2. But as far as actually, like, one-on-one fighting and taking down, I had better luck.
I didn't think of it that way.
I had better luck
probably could've
seizing
tried
people.
that.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I had better luck seizing opponents.
They are. It does seem like they're a lot more. They're a lot better utilized as an aggro manager, where they'll have stuff focusing on them and in turn not focusing on you. And they have a decent health bar. They
Yeah,
don't-
but
they don't
overall
just get
they're
destroyed.
overall I don't think they were really. It probably wouldn't have affected it that much had I
Yeah,
not taken them
they're
with
not-
me. You know?
Right, that's how I felt. And
Yeah.
I was just frustrated. I didn't think about weakening an enemy and then having them finish them off,
Yeah.
which probably would have helped me get the achievement. But anyway, so
Achievement Hunter Matt.
we've talked about it a lot, I think, off camera. But the boss battles with Hartman are the hardest in the game for sure. They get increasingly harder depending on what order you play them in. The final one was so hard that you messaged me and said you think the game was bugged.
Yeah, like Jesus Christ.
And you said that other people online also felt it was bugged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was trying to do some echo chambering because I was mad.
What I said was those people are bugging.
Yo, you're bugging if you think this is bugged.
And then Matt manually responded to every single one.
Hello?
Is anybody there?
Yeah.
Is it a hotline call?
Yeah, they're saying no, that's how the game works. You're just bad.
Oh no! We're getting a
No,
hotline
that
call.
fight was so fucking hard.
It was really fucking crazy hard.
I told Andrew I had to take 3 literal breaks from the game
Yeah.
throughout playing that. Where I
I
had to
may
like
have
rule
just
of
turned the
threes.
difficulty down. I think I used assist mode on that part because I was just like, I don't fucking care about the accomplishment.
I hear you.
I just
There was
you know,
that part of me that it was one of those things where after the first 15 times I died, I considered it, and then I kind of like hunkered down and I was like, maybe I just need to not be so angry. It's like when you watch someone get in an actual fight, and you go, the guy who just goes and just starts swinging a bunch,
Gets wrecked.
it's gonna get knocked
Yeah.
out. But the guy who kind of relaxes and waits and, you know what I mean, bides his time, and I was like, I just need to hide and I need to run around a lot. So I went back, respect into energy, so that
respect.
respect. But I respect my character so that I had most of my points into energy, so that then I could just evade 10 or 12 times in a row without having to stop.
Yeah.
You mean like you reset your points?
Yeah.
No, I had been stocking up points
Oh.
that I had been intending on using for something else. And
Can
then
you
I had
reset
to...
your points though? Can
Yeah.
you reset? Yeah.
It's 10,000 source. I
that's
think.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah.
Yeah, so you hold X on the
Oh, okay.
ability page.
I had just been saving up. I was like, I really just want to fully upgrade this one thing. And then I was like, I guess I have to fucking give up that dream
Yeah.
so I can kill Hartman right now.
By that point, man, I was really feeling cocky because I'd put a lot of time into the game at this point. I didn't realize it, but and I don't think I mentioned it in the just the core game video. By the time I beat the game, and I didn't do this intentionally, by the time I completed the primary campaign, I had already beaten the rest of the side missions, all of them.
Oh, yeah?
Excluding the ones that are unmarked, that are like, collect the Maneki Nico, the cats, and that
one's really
extra
hard.
stuff. That one is, yeah. I didn't progress in that at all. So I was pretty beefed up.
Foundation.
I did.
okay.
I did tons of the countermeasures. I was just like, man, I love this game. I enjoyed the progression. So yeah, like having Hartman, that final battle, just destroy me. I was getting.
He's just
indignant.
teabagging you.
I was being a little shit bitch baby about it for
He'll
sure.
grab you, suck the life out of you, and then you die, and then you can watch afterwards. He just continues to swipe
He
the
just-
gravel out of the ground under you. Like,
Stomps your
just
ass.
absolutely stomps you.
Well, one of his primary abilities or mechanics is that he can create this darkness that does not allow you to restore your energy. And
Right. Yeah. It drains. It kind of like because normally anytime you're out of that darkness, just scoots right back up.
Yeah. So
But it seems like it drains it slightly, and then also prevents you from
it
regenerating.
does start to drain
It
it.
helps
after
it, yeah,
I think there's a
yeah.
buffer, and then it starts to drain it as well. So it becomes this kind of like you're thrown into the shark pool, where like you got to get the fuck out of there and back into a light source until if he gets you, because if he gets you, you're probably
Which was very similar to Alan Wake.
Yeah.
Which was really
Yeah,
cool that
it
they
was-
brought that you can heal fast in the light.
like carrying
Yeah, they
carrying
brought all
around
those. Yeah.
carrying around a light sourse and stuff. I was like, Jesus, it does kind of feel like I'm a souped up badass Alan Wake.
Yeah, the only thing that was a little frustrating for me was I would have liked if she had just like been able to pick up a flashlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Rather than
like
having to lever
she had to
it.
like get
Hold
like a
X to
halogen
equip.
work light and like
Yeah.
hold it like with the fucking.
Because she always one
telekinesis.
hands the service weapon. Her right hand's just empty the whole time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
point.
it could be the kind of thing where, oh yeah, when you enter, you just find a flashlight and you use it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let's
Have to be an altered item or some shit.
Yeah, there's another. There's two things I just wanted to point out that I thought. One was funny, and one I was wondering if you guys found it as well. One was, I believe it's Langston's talking to you, and he asks you if you have do you have any flashlights? Flashlights
Yes.
help. Then I go, or if you even have like a headlamp or a Christmas light, so you can like
Yeah,
wrap
so you
around.
can wrap
And then
around.
I think Jesse cuts him off in the middle of it. But I thought that was funny.
awesome. That was very
a
funny.
cool.
I love Langston. He's one
That
of
was a
my favorite
nice
characters.
reference. Langston was a very consistent comic relief throughout
Yeah.
that whole
Yeah,
section.
I don't think we really said it, but basically Langston is somehow tapped into the communications system in Investigations, but it's broken.
Yeah.
So he can talk to you and he can see you, but you can't talk to him.
Yep.
Unless you're at there's one.
It's in the central
Like-
area of all the AWEs.
Yeah, so you can, but Jesse, for the majority of it, cannot respond.
Yeah, usually you can't respond to him. So
And that poor
And he-
lonely man takes full advantage of that
yeah,
situation.
he seems very willfully ignorant of the fact that you're not responding to him, and he will talk for I don't know, maybe like 2.5, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I listened all the way through.
At regular intervals throughout the game. He's kind of like your lifeline in the investigation sector. And it's amusing. Yeah.
I really liked listening to him because there are, while he dawdles a lot, and I found that was funny. There are sometimes little nuggets in there that you can latch on
absolutely,
to. that
yeah.
are like, that build the world in some way.
Well, one of the things that was pretty crazy is that you find out that an agent, Alex Casey from the FBI,
Yes.
had asked for all of the AWE Bright Falls files.
And then the FBC investigator made the connection between Alex Casey being also the name
Yeah.
of who Alan Wake, the character Alan Wake writes, who's supposed to be Max Payne, effectively, right?
He's basically a
kind of the
stand-in
idea.
for Max Payne.
Yeah.
And God, there's
That opened up a million more questions for me.
so there, but
As
there,
it should.
so in Quantum Break, there's a video that's basically a concept trailer for a possible Alan Wake sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And like Remedy went on record to talk about it, saying like this is not a trailer for a sequel. This is just like this is almost like just a concept art video of like
Yeah.
these are themes we would like to explore. This is like maybe the vibe of it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of thing we'd like to try to do.
Yeah.
In it, essentially, FBI agent Alex Casey is investigating the Bright Falls AWE and is trying to find what happened to Alan Wake.
Right.
And it's like a missing persons case.
Yeah.
And he does eventually come face to face with someone who looks like Alan Wake and is murdered by him. And his partner is then looking for Alex Casey.
What the hell? So that he's like in that concept, he's Nightingale's partner.
It'd be similar.
Yeah.
Similar. Yeah, but this is after the fact.
After that already took place. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I'm sure that if we know the FBI is looking for Alan Wake, or at least
Yeah.
Agent Casey is. So the FBI is aware. The FBI must also be aware of Nightingale. Even though
absolutely.
he was fired, he was still posing as a federal agent.
Yeah.
And I'm sure at some point that did come back around to bite him in the ass.
Yeah, for sure.
So there is definitely a link between these federal agencies and everything, and it is exciting to think that they have confirmed the existence of Alex Casey.
Yeah. And what the questions
like-
that opened up for me was
How the fuck did Alan do that?
well, not so much. It's now that Alan has been in the dark place for so long, or whatever it is, have any of the things that he's written that have fit the parameters to, manifest themselves. Has that just started becoming reality? You know what I mean?
Maybe time.
Whereas because
is
he
a
can write
factor?
things where he can write things in the dark place that don't become reality because they don't meet the parameters he needs to meet as he starts to learn. So maybe not all of the stories he's written in the past meet the parameters to become reality, but the Alex Casey story, being such a popular story or whatever, met the parameters, you know what I mean, through his writing style.
Yeah, and there's another
manifest.
there's another thing in the Alan Wake remaster that I don't think you guys have seen, but that there's three
hot
videos
coffee
you
mod?
find. Yes, there's 3 videos you can find
The Barry.
With Barry and Alan.
that are linked to where the QR codes were in the original game.
Oh, okay.
So he basically talks about Alex Casey a lot in these videos.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're hotline style videos where it's him at the typewriter, like that loop that they use whenever he's
Yep.
at the hotline.
We count as real.
Which I think looks so cool.
Yeah, it's
That framing of him facing you in the foreground, and then like his like bust from the back as the background,
His busty back.
his busty big titted back. It looks so cool.
It's a really good
New York City.
compromise between full-on live-action video and the sort of like
Murder. Corruption and
sort of like the more low-budget kind of like cheesier stuff they did like in Night Springs.
Yeah.
yeah,
Where it's
just
like-
a nice loop.
It's very basic,
Yeah.
but it really does. It fits like
A detective story.
I could see that same image on like a little TV in one of the games somewhere. Like
Yeah.
it's
Just him
it's a
doing
great
that, like,
evolution of
looping
that
of
idea.
him like turning and yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is every single hotline interaction you have with him is the same visual clip
yeah.
put on loop.
But anyway, he talks about like a some sort of like a birth almost of a person coming into reality, and I do wonder if somehow he did I don't know if he did somehow summon Alex Casey into reality, which would also kind of break my understanding of what the Dark Place is capable of. But at the same time, who knows if it's actually him doing it or what?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
doesn't
And you also
seem-
have to ask, is Alan a conduit for this also? You know what I mean? Because he
Yeah.
was sought out and selected and seems to be doing better than anyone else has. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's a para-utilitarian in some regard.
Yeah.
Like, part of me wonders if, possibly he wrote the Alex Casey novels not fully aware that Alex Casey already existed, and he was, writing these novels but that's the other thing, is that he kills Alex Casey in the books.
Yeah. The fall of
But
Alex Casey.
that's where it raises a question. Maybe not all of the books he's written met the
Right.
parameters. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and
It's
also,
interesting 'cause-
if you want to get really deep,
yeah,
it's very unclear when Alan actually enters the Dark Place.
true. Also true.
It's debatable because is it if he enters it when he dives in after Alice
in the beginning.
in the beginning of the game, when he jumps off the cliff of the or jumps off the balcony.
Yeah.
Alice. That
Well,
dramatically.
That's already
influences.
that's already questionable, because how would he even be on the balcony of the cabin if the cabin didn't exist?
Yeah. Is
You know?
Alice real?
It's possible that he had already been in the Dark Place, and that the entirety of the game is somehow happening
Some
in his
machination.
mind, because
Yeah.
at the end of the DLCs, they
Shit's-
kind of
yeah.
pulls back, and you see that adventure you just had in the DLC was happening in his head, and he's back and he's actually still in the cabin.
Yeah.
So he could have been in the cabin from before the point the game actually even started, technically.
Yeah. That's a fair point. That's fucking
There's a lot of options there.
So
yeah.
if that were the case,
M. Night Shyamalan shit going on
so
over
sweating.
here. Yeah.
if that were the case, then he could have written the Alex Casey novels from within the Dark Place.
Well, because then it also, as you brought up, we're getting back into Alan Wake here, but that's what we're doing right now, right? But anyways, you brought up that in some of the flashbacks you have in Alan Wake, when you're in your apartment with your wife, that you see the old woman,
Oh, Barbara Jagger?
Barbara Jagger, her Jaeger, however you want to say it, her reflection in your window. And you don't know if that's her
That scared the fuck out of me.
insidiously
That was so
seeping
cool.
into your flashbacks and your dreams, or if she was actually present at that time. And then so if she was, then you've been in the Dark Place for
Forever.
God knows how long.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
it's impossible to tell.
It is.
I imagine we'll get some answers eventually.
I
Fucking
do-
hopefully, man.
Well, speaking of stuff what do you want to say?
Operating under the assumption that Alan only entered the Dark Place. Oh, that really fucking changes everything, Matt. Dude, Jesus Christ. Operating under the assumption that he only enters the Dark Place when we see him dive in exchange for Alice's freedom from the Dark Place. On that timeline, I do think it would be surprising if whatever macro entity, God, or omnipotent being that there may be, would allow for Alan to write Alex Casey, have it become as successful as well known as it is, and then let that character be made into existence as the same entity. I think that would be surprising. That seems too
Well, we don't know. I
seems
mean,
too close to,
the success of the books could have just been something that Alan wrote
Yeah.
to be it was a successful series of novels. It could that may also be fictional.
Yeah.
It's impossible to tell right now. And another thing that makes this all the more confusing is that at several points in the game, you get to see behind the spiral door in the Ocean View Motel,
You do.
and you see Alan in a space that isn't the cabin.
No.
It's not super identifiable.
Which I think is worth noting, that he's not in the cabin.
No, he's just.
Where is he if he's not in the cabin?
Where is he? Where's Alan Wake?
And it does make me wonder about the true nature of the cabin.
That was bad.
Yeah, and the Dark Place in general.
Yeah,
Period,
and so
because it also said that they recreated the cabin at the FBC in the oldest house to try to calm Hartman.
they recreated the lodge.
Oh, the
recreated the
lodge,
lodge,
the
yeah.
lodge. I
So-
misunderstood.
When you it took me a second too, because it wasn't what I anticipated.
No, it
In that-
wasn't.
in that final fight with
Where you go to the recreation of Bright Falls.
yeah, it was fine, but I anticipated it. For some reason, I thought it was going to be Bright Falls, even though I knew it was going to be the lodge. Yeah, it's just that the building on the left is the lodge, and then it's kind of like I don't want to say courtyard, but like that centerpiece.
Yeah.
There's like a big column, like a monolith that is representative of not the sundial, but just the structures and the pillars.
Yeah,
Yeah, it didn't really
an
resemble
entrance.
it at all.
It's very basic.
When I looked at it from a different angle, I saw it because
Yeah.
there's a photograph in there. There's like a little observation deck,
Yes.
and there's a photograph in there where you can see that was their reference photo for
Oh,
building
okay.
it. But it's basically, you see the lodge from this angle so briefly in Alan Wake that you wouldn't necessarily make the immediate connection, I
Yeah.
don't think.
That's why I remember reading that and then getting in there and being like, this isn't
No,
just a
be-
warehouse. It's
Yeah.
just an empty warehouse.
Yeah, it wasn't, because when I don't know what Ordinary looked like, but when I looked at the recreation of Ordinary, it was like, oh, it's like a little Godzilla town. And
Yeah,
this was-
exactly. Yeah.
This was different.
Which
Yeah.
you have a really cool battle there. Not to gloss over that. Like when you do get into that, it is a recreation of Ordinary, but it is still to some sort of very small scale.
Yeah.
But then like all the hiss pour in, and it's cool, and
It's a really cool battle.
the
Yeah.
the implications of Jessie being reunited with her hometown that I'm assuming she hasn't seen. I'm assuming they just boarded up Ordinary and no one's allowed
no.
to go there.
No,
No,
not at all.
Is it a normal city?
Yeah.
Really?
Hmm?
Wow. After all the adults disappeared,
There was a conscious effort to repopulate it. They talk about it at points.
they started fucking each other.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, also, the Ordinary AWE happened in the late 90s? Or when was it?
It was 17 years before.
That's 2000.
So it's 2002? 'Cause it's
yeah.
2019.
2002? Yeah, because in 2012, Samantha Wells bought the house in Ordinary
I
from the This House of Dreams blog, which I don't know if you...
I forgot to check out the blog. Is that
Oh,
what it's
well.
entirely centered around? Is purchasing this house?
Yes.
Oh wow, okay.
That
You linked me to that, and I was like, I gotta check that out, and I totally forgot.
that's the introduction of the FBC and of Ordinary.
Wow,
All the way back
yeah.
in 2012.
God dang.
And it also suggests quite a bit about the nature of the Dark Place and of Thomas Zane.
Yeah. Thomas Zane does get brought up a few times
Right.
during this as well.
So
Yeah.
let's start all the way back. At one point, you're listening to, and to wrap up what you were saying, crazy battle where yes, like she's like basically stomping all over the town like a big Godzilla monster.
yeah,
yeah,
which,
just destroying her hometown.
But yeah, it must be very bizarre for her.
Yeah.
I'm sure she has a little quip, but just that the implications there of like thinking of a real person in that experience, bizarre.
Yeah, but she is she at one point is institutionalized
Jessie?
in her youth. Yeah, we don't know exactly when this is, but we know at one point she was she was caught shoplifting,
Yep.
and at some point she was institutionalized, and she is seeing a therapist of some sort. I don't really remember if it's a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But she's in some sort of therapy session, and they're like, I looked up that poem that you told me about the other day, and I couldn't find any evidence of a poet named Thomas Zane. All I could find was this filmmaker, I think a European filmmaker.
that came
Yeah.
to the United States in the 60s.
Yeah,
yeah.
When
And-
I heard that, I was just like, what the fuck?
Right.
I had one of those moments where I was like, oh my god, are they turning over everything I thought I knew?
No, well, because they touched base on that in Alan Wake, I believe, didn't they?
Well, hold on.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so just real quick, what they say is like, Jesse, if you're gonna get better, you need to like stop making stuff up. Like, Ordinary didn't happen.
Yeah.
There's nothing in your head, and Thomas Zane isn't a poet. Like, you made that poem up. Like, you need to
Yeah.
stop this. And and they're saying if you want to be released, like, you need to get better. So
Yeah.
at some point, she was institutionalized. And was basically gaslit into thinking nothing happened. Now I'm assuming that
that kind of.
anyone who was giving her any sort of medical care was acting under the assumption that she definitely was delusional.
Oh yeah,
And
for sure.
I don't think anyone outside the FBC was aware of the ordinary
sure.
AWE
Oh, not at all,
because
no.
there were no witnesses.
They probably
Yeah.
just pushed her into the bin, much like they did with Sarah Connor from Terminator 2.
Oh, okay.
That's the point you were trying to make in the other video.
I don't think so because you seemed surprised to find out she had been institutionalized.
I must have missed out on that because I obviously I listened to the
I remember that specific moment you're talking about. I
Yeah.
don't remember specific mention of her being institutionalized.
Yeah.
But I remember.
Well, they only say it if you want to be released or if you want to
Yes.
get out of here.
I just didn't make the connection.
yeah I
That's
must have that- which is so,
And
such a heavy
so
phrase.
the FBC had these recordings. They had confiscated them at some point. These recordings, these therapy sessions. Now,
I wouldn't be surprised if they, I don't know, I don't think they bugged them, but I don't know if well, I don't know. I guess I'm getting into a lot of conjecture here, but they could have bugged the room, or they could have had, just like,
well, it's very common for people who are institutionalized to have their therapy sessions recorded.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
'Cause
so
I
they could
think
have just subpoenaed all of it.
Yeah.
a regular therapy session wouldn't necessarily, like regular, like if you just, wanted to talk to somebody that wouldn't specifically warrant a
Right.
film unless a recording. But
Well, yeah, I think
guess
it's. I think it's
would if
about,
you were in
and I think it's about a person's style of work. Some
Yeah,
people
yeah.
write,
that
some people
too.
record.
So that doesn't have
That's
any.
I think that's the difference.
But you said you thought there was some mention of something with Thomas Zane and Alan Wake?
I
or-
have a memory of. I mean, obviously Thomas Zane's mentioned in Alan Wake.
They
but,
mention him, yeah.
He's brought up.
I think at the end of the game they
I
talk
think
about him.
real quick at the end. But anyways,
I think I saw- he's-
I
he's
thought
a-
there was mention of like, I don't know how to formulate this thought entirely, but that other people weren't aware that he was a famous poet. Like that he's referred
Well-
to as a poet by some people, but as other people he is nobody of note.
That's the thing. So when he went into the dark place, his legacy and memory of him were wiped from reality,
Yes.
except for anything that he put inside of a shoebox.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything related to him that's in a shoebox, and it's a shoebox.
No, so it's not just the one that Alan found in the cabin.
There are multiple shoeboxes.
Okay. So that makes sense then. That explains.
And then,
it.
did you guys find the shoebox whiteboard in Control? Where they talk about all the shoebox stuff?
No.
No.
Hey, there's something to look up.
No, I definitely will. That's
Was
fucking
this
cool as
in the
hell.
AWE?
I think so, but I don't remember. I mean, there's so many fucking whiteboards.
Yeah, the place is full of whiteboards.
There was a lot of whiteboards, and
I'm upset. That I
no.
didn't see
Was this
that
the
now.
one with tons of writing on it? No, that's something else.
No, this one talks about the shoebox.
I hate that I missed this.
Hey, I think using the power of the internet, you were able to pull up an image of that whiteboard.
I did. I managed to find the whiteboard, and let me tell you, I am pissed at myself for not finding it because this is super cool. So I'm just gonna read it all off here. So bear with me because I'm not the greatest reader. Shoebox notes. Some notes. I think I've stumbled into something here. Only notes. Early hypothesis now. Further tests needed. It says shoebox retrieved from ordinary. Potential altered item not flagged. AWE in the lab. Everything affected but the shoebox and contents. We recreated the event, same result. Recreated with a different shoebox from home. Same result, what the fuck. Shoeboxes can't be altered. Content safe? Why? How? A loophole? We could use this. And then off to the right, it's branching off. Summer 2012, the ordinary AWE, 2002. Samantha Wells, repopulation ongoing in the town. Blog, This House of Dreams, which we've mentioned. Contents point to Thomas Zane. Reference Bright Falls AWE, 1970 summer, 2010 fall. Connected? And then, who took the fucking shoebox? We're in the middle of a test here. Bring it back, idiots.
So, in the This House of Dreams blog, Samantha Wells buys an old house in Ordinary. It's the house of her dreams, and she starts a blog that's a remodeling blog. She's like, I'm going to fix up this old house.
Mm-hmm.
The previous owner, gone, but she is able to contact the daughter of the previous owner. And she's like, hey, there's a bunch of stuff in the attic. Like, I can take it. Cool. She finds a shoebox full of poems. And she's like, who is this? Daughter's like, I don't know. I think my grandmother may have got it from or mother, whoever, aunt, may have got it from a yard sale. I really can't say for sure.
Mm-hmm.
In the attic, there is a box of the poems, handwritten notes on them, typewritten pages, making direct reference to Emil Hartman's time working with Thomas Zane as his mentor, whatever,
Yeah.
assistant, I should say assistant.
Protege.
Yeah, so there's a lot in there. You get a good handful of Thomas Zane's poems, but also notes about his relationship to Emil and to Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about using the power of the Dark Place and of Cauldron Lake
Right.
as they're doing this. And there's also some photographs in there as well. Now, what happens in the blog is she finds it, and then she is like, she has a dream where men come to her door, and their badges, their FBI looking agents, their badges say AWE on them, and they take the shoebox from her. And it's all kind of hazy for her. She can't fully remember this dream, but then when she wakes up, the shoebox is gone. And so, first off, why would their badges say AWE? Well, the original name for the Bureau of Control was the Bureau of Altered World Events.
Okay.
People have found that Remedy actually took out a copyright for that name, and that was the working name
Okay.
for the agency. So, they've kind of retconned that to now be...
Federal Bureau of Control.
Yeah, but so when those are AWE agents, those are FBC agents.
Okay.
So that's one little discrepancy that people might find, but
Give him a break.
she was
Like 10 years.
She's contacted by someone who's like, there's some powerful people who want that shoebox. Like, if you promise not to talk about this, I can help you out. But like, this
But
can't get out.
The shoebox is already gone by this point, yeah?
Right, but it comes back mysteriously.
What?
And it has different stuff in it. And so what you see there on the whiteboard is that they're experimenting on it, and then someone took it.
Yeah.
That's when she got it back.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that whoever reached out to her was this defector from the FBC that took the shoebox and gave it back to her.
Right, I'd imagine.
And this is
then-
this
but
is stuff
then-
that happened back in 2012.
Yeah. This question, why is it still on the whiteboard? This questions the motive of the person that did
Because
that.
the sector was shut down.
it's in the
right?
investigation
Well, that was
sector.
2017 when it was shut down.
Yeah. Why would the person want to return it? Did they think it was too dangerous? Did they understand? Did they?
They thought based on what was written on the whiteboard, they thought that they could utilize it as a loophole. Because
Yeah.
if no matter what, when they continued to recreate the tests, it was everything they put in there was still unaltered. And in any shoebox, they noted.
Right, and that's the rule that Thomas Zane wrote before he went
Yeah.
into the Dark Place.
So universally,
Yeah.
shoeboxes are just
In reality, that's the
which-
rule he
which-
wrote into reality.
Which implies that the power the Dark Place has is beyond, what we've probably really considered.
Right, so I believe you can't create or manifest things, but
Yes.
maybe you can create laws of physics, or something
Right, or
like that.
reality,
And then you can't alter people's free will, is my other understanding of it.
I wanted to say, like, questioning the motive of the person that defected and returned that back to Samantha. Does it follow what happens after that? As far as, like, she was contacted by people?
Yeah,
Or does
it goes,
does it goes real deep?
it seems like people are watching her, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the blog goes silent. So we're getting all
over the
off
place.
track. That's a little aside to, well, one, how the hell did Jesse know about Thomas Zane as a poet? Is it possible that Jesse was at one point in that house and read those poems?
Yeah.
Because one of the poems that she recites is one of the poems that was in the shoebox.
Yeah.
It's my thought was either that or it's whoever the woman was who owned the house was either like a teacher or someone Jesse knew, and that was just a poem she told to her, told her who it was by, and it's just something Jesse's remembered.
Yeah.
You know
This
what
is
I mean?
all destroyed when we factor in that this is all things that Alan could have not posthumously, but like created Like these may have been threads that he spun from the dark place.
Impossible to know, but I would
Yeah,
say
so it's
I would
just
say
like, oh
not
my God.
necessarily because well, again, it depends on when you enter.
And it begins to touch on that a little bit too, just in the AWE expansion, where in one of the quote unquote like hotline calls you get from Alan, where he's talking about these are the only hotline calls I went aside and watched all the way front to back, even though they're only about 2 minutes each, where he is speaking as the writer, writing Jesse finding the FBC and being drawn to the FBC and having the voice in her mind to almost make you go, how much of this is Jesse's free will? How much of this is being orchestrated by Alan in an attempt to save himself? Because it almost makes it seem as though this
Is that even his motive?
It almost seems as though, because by the time
It
that
seems
you're,
like it, but
we're jumping all over the place here a little
sorry,
bit, so bear
yes.
with us, and I apologize. But because even when you inevitably go to fight Hartman for the final time, Alan seems to keep implying that this is his way out. I think I finally found the plan. I had a plan. I keep forgetting. I can't remember my plan. I've had it again. I forgot it again. He keeps doing that. He's going through that like insanity. So maybe it seems strange and weird and odd that like Hartman is what's keeping, Alan in the dark place or whatever, but it's so convoluted. I don't know what to think.
I can offer some clarity.
Okay.
The story of Alan Wake, and it seems like the power of the dark place, is based on the concept of the hero's journey, which is like a literary archetype you can find all throughout history. But I believe it was Joseph Campbell who kind of solidified, the most commonly attributed like interpretation of this phenomenon, where you can see throughout history. There's
like an outline.
yeah, well, it just like a basic archetype of like a story hits these points. Usually it is the hero has some sort of loss or something that like sparks them on this journey. They go into an unknown land, an unknown realm. Something happens there, and then when they return changed in some way. And it's, there's I believe 36 different points that he, has outlined that if you look at a lot of like great literature throughout history, it follows these same beats.
Yeah.
And Alan Wake follows, I think, more than half of those points, like
So
to a T.
Right.
And one thing that, again, it's frustrating to discuss this without, I don't want to ruin stuff, but you also find something in Quantum Break where you're in a college and there's a lecture on these ideas, and they're discussing Alan Wake in their reality, whatever reality that Quantum Break exists in. They're also aware of Alan Wake, and they're talking about the hero's journey and the three big steps. Because there's multiple.
Analyzing his writing style with Alex Casey, or are they analyze? Oh no, are they? Oh Jesus Christ! Are they talking about?
You gotta just play the fucking game. I don't want to ruin everything.
Break.
I want to. I definitely want to check it out. I didn't mean to derail you.
It's hard to talk about without spoiling everything. I feel like it's we'll get into these games eventually, I'm sure, but the thing, the three big sections are departure, initiation, return. Those are the big three sections.
Yep.
Now, if you think about it,
We don't have the initiation, but we have departure and return from Alan Wake.
well, we have departure. That was the first manuscript that he wrote in the first game.
Yeah.
And he was successful in that.
Yeah.
That was he successfully wrote and finished Departure. That's how he saved Alice. Then he started writing Return. At the end of the DLCs.
That was the DLCs, yeah.
And then, in 2012 we get to Alan Wake's American Nightmare, and he's like, I've been trying to write my way out of the dark place. He's been trying to write his Return. He had been trying this whole time to write his Return, not fully understanding that he was skipping the second step.
Oh, okay.
He went right from Departure to Return. And so it stands to reason that this script that he's been writing with Jesse and the FBC is the initiation.
It's the middle piece that's gonna, yeah.
And he's setting things up because he talks about,
But he's
putting the pieces in place for his eventual return.
His escape, yeah.
And he was successful. He successfully told Jesse's hero's story.
Yeah.
Her journey was a success.
Yeah, it culminated.
And at the end of it, at the end of DLC, you get a alert that there's a Bright Falls AWE happening a couple years in the future.
Yes.
The FBC is getting this alert that they have a AWE watch all around the country. They're like, but the date's off. It's a couple years ahead of the future. So Alan, I'm assuming what this means is that he did departure, Control was initiation, and having seen that it was a success, getting that AWE triggered in the future, I think was saying,
That's
cool,
his return.
you've opened up the path for return.
But he's not the main character of the initiation.
He doesn't have to be, I don't think.
He just has to
those-
initiate his
He's just the
return.
writer.
That story.
This was a really good expansion, I've got to say, all in all. Like, I can't say enough. I don't know. We could go on about this forever, frankly.
We did kind of get off because
Yeah.
I want to say the other thing that we started talking about was Thomas Zane's appearance in AWE. We see Alan behind the door at the Ocean View Motel. He's talking to a mirror image of himself who has a
Yes.
different voice.
Yes.
And this person is identified as Thomas Zane. And he's like, Zane, I kind of remember you. And we find out in American Nightmare that every time Alan enters a new one of these stories that he's writing and engages in these things, he does lose his memory of what happened
the
before.
previous, yeah.
And he has to basically act on instinct, hoping that he'll know that he is doing the thing he wrote he would do, and he's following his own instincts.
Yeah.
So, it's clear that his memory's hazy and he's being deteriorated by this place.
So simultaneously, as he's writing it, he existing within it, and his instinct is likely what he's writing.
He's hoping.
He's hoping.
What the fuck?
He's hoping that he'll be like, well, if I wrote this, it's what I'll do because it would make sense for me to do the thing I thought I would do.
Sam
But-
Lake talks about how when he first became the lead writer at Remedy, that he went back to college and studied English like literature and writing and stuff. I'm beginning to feel like I have to do the same thing to fully understand.
To fully
all
grasp
of
everything
this.
that's going on.
Yeah.
Well, so Thomas Zane is like, he's like, Tom the diver, Tom the poet. He's like, no, that's just a role I played in one of my movies. Remember? Like, I'm an auteur filmmaker. I'm just like you.
I wanted to throw my computer out.
But he says,
the
I think he
window.
says, I'm a filmmaker. I'm an auteur. Auteur being a filmmaker whose work is so so characteristically theirs that you go, this is a Quentin Tarantino film. Even though
this is a Wes Anderson.
yeah, Wes Anderson, I'm sure like 95 other fucking people worked on that movie.
Yeah.
It's so uniquely his style. That's that's auteur. He says I'm an auteur just like you. Now he doesn't say he says you're an auteur is a filmmaker term. People do use it in other ways, but it refers specifically to filmmaking.
Okay.
Are they saying that? Is he saying that Alan, we're both filmmakers? And he says we're working on this together. Remember? And
So like, is the whole thing just a film?
well, so here's the other part. That is like kind of like, where are we going with this? When you go to the drive-in theater in American Nightmare, you go into the projection booth. Well, it's like more of a projection house. It's a
building, yeah.
it's a very big building for just having a projector. It's a pretty big ass projector though. You find a Tom the Poet movie poster. That same movie poster was on the door in the cabin in the dream section tutorial of Alan Wake.
Okay.
And you just saw it as a poster on the door.
It's a poster on the. Jesse talks so often about a poster being on the wall.
And you might be looking too deep into that. It's hard to
Okay.
say. Hard to say, or maybe you're not.
yeah.
But so there's a poster. There's a poster there on the door, and you just see Tom the Poet, and we don't know what that means in Alan Wake.
Yeah.
In an American Nightmare, oh, that is a movie poster because it's hanging where the movie posters are.
Yeah.
There's also an Alex Casey poster, and he acts kind of strange. I don't remember exactly what he says about it. He's like, "Oh, the poster reminded me of Alex Casey, huh?" And
Because it was black and white and it looked like...
yeah. And then in Control, they also say like, "Oh, we're going to see the Alex Casey movie tonight," or they were going to, but they couldn't because of the lockdown. All these things. But as you go into Alan Wake Remastered, they've touched up the model of the poster to make it more explicitly a movie poster.
Of which?
Tom the
The
Poet.
Tom the Poet poster. And so this connection of Thomas Zane being a filmmaker who played the role of a diver in a film, we don't know what this means. I'm not unveiling anything to you other than more questions.
The implication is tremendous. Because it's too many connecting dots for it to be nothing. It's not
Right.
inconsequential.
So the things we don't understand are who was like how is Alan connected to Tom the Poet, Tom the Diver, if that's not even a real person?
Yeah. Is it actually
was it a
Thomas...
film that he saw at some point and just put into his mind, so he wrote it into his own story?
Right.
Because he does pull things from what he knows.
Yeah, but
he
the whole Thomas Zane thing too, though, it's like what specifically in that scenario is, I was like unconvinced that was actually Thomas Zane. You know what I mean?
That's the other thing.
If he is a real
it?
person,
Because,
you know what I mean?
Because also, we don't understand why he looked like Alan.
Yes.
Why was Alan seeing himself? Was Alan seeing himself?
Yeah.
Was it that Thomas Zane looked like Alan? Or was it that Alan was appearing to look like Thomas Zane? We don't know.
Right.
I think that's a fair question.
It's Thomas Zane, just like the narrator that Alan wrote into the novel.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Beyond that,
That mechanic of Alan...
Is he like the omniscient outsider?
Yeah.
well, that was a question people have had since Alan Wake first launched is, wait, is Zane just Alan Wake? Are they the same person? Mm-hmm. Because it's also very confusing. You find yourself in a paradox when you remember that Thomas Zane wrote the page about the clicker and Alan's memories of the clicker and put it in the shoebox.
He's out there.
How could he have written about Alan's life?
Nothing to worry about. I'm dealing with it. It's fine, my friend. Let me handle it.
It's a
You've stumped us.
yeah.
My brain's melting
It puts
right
you
now.
into some paradoxical thinking. It's
That mechanic of Alan forgetting his previous work when entering a new one seems
look
to...
for my water. It wasn't there.
Well, it also kind of
too
makes
far
you.
away.
It kind of makes you wonder: is that what's just been constantly happening, this endless cycle throughout his entire life? And how old is Alan? Is Alan just this writer, or like you said, is he a para-utilitarian, and is he potentially like an altered being? You know
Yeah,
what
I
I
really
mean?
don't know
Could-
what world is real.
Could it be that he's every time he creates something new, it effectively resets in his mind, and like when we came across was some weird thing because he was having a hard time writing something new after Alex Casey, he couldn't write. He had hit a stump. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until effectively he forgot all of that and was in the dark place that he was able to write again.
yeah.
You know?
So the fact that this scene between Zane and Alan is so significantly like it's like front and center in this DLC when you're
And so confusing and ambiguous also.
yeah. And Jesse is just kind of goes like I think she's like almost seeing it through the peephole or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
There is no peephole. I don't know how she's seeing
It's
it.
like it looks like the door's cracked a little bit.
Yeah, she's witnessing this. Then she's just like the door closed and she's like, okay,
Yeah.
that was weird. No idea. Like that, she has the same reaction I think most players would.
Yeah, and she's like, wow, I really hope Alan Wake's doing okay. It seems like
And
he's
then at one
there's-
point he's like, he's coming. I have to get out of here. And so there is something pursuing him as well.
Because there's reports on the Ocean View Motel from the Bureau of people that were stationed in there for times where, the doors would be cracked, and if they tried to look into them, they'd slam, and then there'd be like this, like, don't you dare, kind of like energy.
Well, another thing that happens that I think we may have touched on it, but at one point they find a typewritten page written by Alan Wake.
Yeah.
And they say it's very similar to the ones we found in Bright Falls. And someone from behind the door slipped it underneath the door into the hotel hallway.
Yeah.
So Alan, we know Alan's in there. But But if Alan's in there, and in there doesn't look like the cabin, was he ever really in the cabin?
No, I
Like,
hear
how
you,
did he
yeah.
get, or did he somehow leave the cabin, or is the cabin...
Is he just in the dark place in the cabin? Because the cabin doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It shouldn't.
Yeah. And so, effectively, he's just sitting at a desk at a typewriter. You know what I mean? And his surroundings might appear to him as a cabin. He might perceive them as a cabin, but he's just in the dark place. That's my understanding.
Yeah, and I almost get the impression that the only reason he appeared in the cabin at all is because he was writing a story that included these elements of this Tom the Diver, Tom the Poet film,
Yeah.
which probably included Diver's Isle and the cabin and Barbara Jagger and all this stuff. And if Barbara Jagger is like a Baba Yaga type figure from, from folklore, then maybe he's just taking like a character from folklore that he was aware of and putting that into the,
Right.
it leaves so many questions. But the few things I can say for sure are people are like, wow, this sucks. Like I played the DLC and now like, so nothing was real and like Alan just wrote like Jesse's story and she doesn't matter. It's like, no, because the FBC had to exist for him to have any influence over any of the events.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get into her own free will. She had her own reasons to be there, and he talks about using things like Alice and Hartman as connections to the FBC.
Yeah.
To be able to kind of like anchor himself into this.
To have more connection.
So,
Which allows him more, not control, but like more ability to
Yeah.
influence.
so I a lot of people were very mad about that, thinking like
I
they
don't
basically
think
just
he
retconned
wrote-
the whole story and just be like, now it's actually Alan Wake's story, and it's not how it worked.
No, I don't think they retcon the whole story. They just connected the two because there's so many things in Alan Wake about him writing things, and it's the whole debate of am I actually causing this to happen? You know what I mean? Or,
Right, but if you never played it,
yeah, fair.
you just heard him say like Jesse did this, they're
Yeah.
like, oh great, it's Alan.
Cool.
That's that story about the writer who makes things happen, isn't it?
Fucking second-rate Stephen King, goddamn rope.
2010 bullshit game.
So-
My thoughts on the Ocean View Motel, and like anyone could come up with thousands of theories. I wouldn't be surprised. I shouldn't say I wouldn't be surprised, but something that my mind is coming up to is that like I feel like you only have access to the door that you have access to, if that makes sense. I don't know what it is that ties you to it, because the FBC has access to the triangle, which seems to represent the
board.
board. But there's others that like the
There's
shutters,
multiple,
there's,
but I
like,
think it's-
whispers.
And this is also just a theory. You finish first, sorry.
I don't think you can access any of those other doors unless there is a really strong connection between them. And I don't know what those doors go to. Well, we do kind of know what those doors go to. But the spiral is indicative of Alan Wake. So that's his door. And I'm just taking what we know about what's inside of Jesse's door is just the light switch and a projection of wherever it is that she's heading. Maybe that projection, and this is totally conjecture, this is my word, hashtag conspiracy. Maybe that projection is there for Jesse because the projector is an object of power that had that's related to her influence on the world. The only reason she's there is because of that projector. So,
I thought it was like more of a.
I thought it was a painting.
Is it a painting?
I'm pretty
Yeah.
confident it's just a painting.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because it exists in the room when you pull the light switch to go to the motel, and then I'm pretty sure it's just a painting. I think there's a frame around it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, like
I remember there
like
being
an
frames around
embossed
the other
wooden
stuff.
frame.
I thought it was just a square image of wherever you're going, and I thought it had like this kind of like
I'm
opacity.
pretty
Yeah,
confident
it
it's a
doesn't.
frame.
Damn.
I'm pretty confident. My understanding was that the only reason
Well,
the
the
reason
other
you can
stuff
go through
stands.
the triangle door is because you came in from there. You know what I mean? In effect, because that's where you came from. It's like if you entered so ostensibly, if you entered the motel through the dark place as Alan, you'd only then be able to go back through the spiral door.
Yeah, it
think-
seems like you can't open the doors.
Maybe unless you're Ati.
Right, and so
Otherwise-
that's a whole other thing. Where Ati, I think in
Foundation.
well, no, in different in Finnish mythology and in Norse mythology, Ati is the name of basically like a god of water, a god that watches over like fishermen and seamen. It's like it's not like there's not like one. You know, there's
Yeah.
multiple interpretations of this character, but essentially he's a godlike figure tied to bodies of water. And
Hence why he goes to watery.
right, sure.
Well, he's always got that bucket of water with him.
Yeah, and also I
drinking a
hear
water
his,
bottle.
his body is like
It's
98% water.
mostly water, yeah.
That guy loves water. You can't get enough.
So, you know, and at points in the game, like they do mention, like, you know, in so many words, hey, he might seem weird, but leave him alone. He basically is above everyone in the FBC. They do, like, in documents, like, they basically say, like, why is that janitor? And they're like, don't even question it.
Yeah,
like,
there's
this
things
is
where
not...
like, why is the janitor in the restricted area just
Yeah.
mopping? You know what I mean? Like,
Also, like,
fuck.
how does he get to certain areas in the first
Yeah.
place? Like, how is he able to? You know, he seems to be a paranatural entity who is, I think, somehow maybe either a caretaker of the oldest house.
I think he's connected directly to the oldest house.
Yeah,
A lot of
I think
this-
he transcends the FBC by a
Oh
lot.
yeah,
For
absolutely.
sure. Much of this is explored in Foundation, and you haven't played it yet, so I don't want to get. I don't remember what is from Foundation and what's not, so I don't want to talk.
If it's
about
a lot
too
about
much.
Ati, I don't know a lot about Ati.
There's-
So
It
it's
doesn't.
all speculation for me.
It definitely doesn't focus on him, but if you're reading between the lines, it does. So yeah, there's a lot to do with Ati, and he's a much larger character than. Clearly, they're trying to make him seem like a small thing when in reality.
I don't think they were. I think they were. I think they were really trying to implant that idea in your head.
Yeah.
That he is more important than it seems, because it seems as though while you're taking orders from the board, you're also taking orders from Ati, and it seems like maybe his orders like override the board's orders. If like the board gives you directive, it's like okay, but Ati needs you to do this though while you're there, and you're like okay, if he's a janitor though.
Yeah,
It's like no, but Ati said you got to do this, so get it done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you feel a
You feel
compulsion
like
to,
like an obligation.
you know, putting him aside, the other thing that you know we should talk about in the AWE DLC specifically,
Yes.
going about the whole thread of what influence did Alan have. Now we talked briefly yesterday about the Night Springs screenplay
Yes.
that appeared at the FBC after they had already had all the scripts. This one showed up there, which basically depicts a professor, a research scientist and a director of the Federal Bureau of Night Springs, and they enter the threshold,
Right.
and a thing gets in the director's head, and he's become corrupted, and he has control now, simulating the events that sparked the Hiss invasion.
Yeah.
Now,
which was penned by Alan Wake.
right. So it does suggest that Alan influenced Zachariah Trench's
Downfall.
his corruption.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that he necessarily caused it to happen. They were going to investigate the slidescape anyway. But he says for his story to work, he needed something that would mimic human intelligence. And so what he did was he took a bunch of writing, cut it up, put it in a shoebox, pulled it out word by word, and made this Dadaist poem. That poem that he pulled out is the Hiss incantation.
Yep.
Now, I don't believe that means that he created the Hiss resonance, but I think in the same way that the HRAs are amplifiers for the Hedron resonance, I think that he created an amplifier for the Hiss resonance through the incantation. And he willed that incantation into reality, allowing the Hiss resonance to amplify throughout the building, giving Jesse an enemy to fight.
Because there's nothing suggesting that the Hiss requires the incantation.
No,
They're
because
fine if they're not doing it.
Because Trench was corrupted
Initially
without
corrupted.
the incantation.
And
was no-
your brother mentions Dylan that he just
likes
likes
to
doing
do
it.
it, yeah.
He's like, oh no, I don't have to. It just feels nice. I
Yeah.
like to.
So it's like the Hiss resonance exists beyond the incantation.
Yeah, because it existed in the slidescape without
Yeah.
them hearing this. You know.
Right.
There was
But
no
Alan did
recounts of it.
create the incantation as well. which is like another reason people are like, oh, so he made the no. It's like no, he made a Hiss HRA basically.
Where what source tells us that he did this?
He describes the process in one of the hotline calls.
Yeah.
What the?
You really have to.
wasn't
These
even-
hotline calls I decided to watch when you told me
I
that
watched
they're
them like 3
extended.
times
I
to
watched
be like,
all of them.
what?
I should have
Yeah.
watched them.
But he talks about
again.
cutting it up and creating a Dadaist poem.
He's like, yeah, I'll try anything once.
Yeah.
At that, I remember listening to that, and I watched everything, the full extent ones. At the time, and it seems like it's so obvious, but I remember thinking that I was like, oh, I don't know what this means just yet. I'm sure it'll make sense later. When
Well,
in reality,
Unless you knew, some of the phrases. I think there's 1 or 2 phrases that he says that you also hear Dylan say.
Yeah, there's something about like an orange peel or something. And
Yeah.
then,
yeah, Hartman said that too. Baby, 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 orange peel.
Yeah.
I was like, why do they keep saying this?
Because it's just a nonsense poem, just a cut up.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the implications here are that, Alan basically took advantage of tensions at the FBC, allowed for Trench's negativity because, Trench had already lost his daughter at this point. Trench was loose. He allowed for Trench to be corrupted, and then
his
then
wife left him as well. So
Okay.
further informing
Yeah.
how messed up Trench was.
And so, he was able to get, basically, I think, allow for Trench to become infected, and then took that infection and through the poem was able to amplify that and create an enemy for Jesse to become a hero. Because if
Right.
Jesse went in there only looking for
Dylan.
and, didn't, have this, this other thing to overcome,
Yeah, this arc where she has to save this entire place, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if she would be a hero. She might
Yeah.
have just been apprehended.
That's fair. Because if she had just showed up, out of nowhere, they had been looking for her to make her a prime candidate.
Yeah.
And as far as we could tell, it said that the Darling was keeping the candidate going, full force until he disappeared or whatever,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, inevitably during all the chaos. So if you had just showed up while everything was going, business as normal, you might have been turned into prime candidate 7.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, never a hero, just another cog in the wheel to get lost in the annals.
Yeah.
Another slip.
Jordan's
Saying
saying
cock
wild
yesterday,
stuff.
annals. Speaking of that Jesse Faden VR porn.
So
Next up on Waketober.
the other thing I wanted to bring up was
Who comes first?
you mentioned this yesterday, but there is a new configuration for the service weapon that you get,
Yes,
which is
Surge.
Surge. And what does that do?
You shoot 3. I think you can upgrade it inevitably, but you get 3 mines, like little sticky bombs that you can shoot,
Right.
and then detonate on your own. And you can either shoot and detonate immediately, or if you're aiming, you can stack them.
Yeah.
And then detonate all of them at once.
And we didn't really go over this yesterday, but the service weapon has 6 configurations in total. The first 5 in the game. There are 2 more in the Foundation that only work in the Foundation,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
and they're more navigational tools than they are
Okay,
offensive
they're
tools.
niche.
Yeah, but you have the Grip, which is like a revolver.
That's the standard.
You have Shatter, which is a shotgun. Spin, which is like an SMG. Pierce, which is a charged up precision shot, and then Charge, which you'd think would be the charged shot, but
Yeah, I
actually
know.
it's like a grenade launcher.
Yeah.
And so it has all the basic weapons: a pistol, shotgun, machine gun,
Sniper.
sniper
launcher,
shot,
yeah.
and then grenade launcher kind of shot. The thing that I think is really interesting is that in all Remedy games, ammo is abundant. Like when you're about to fight something, there's caches of ammo all around, and
Yeah.
guns are disposable. You might not your inventory might not carry over from mission to mission,
Yeah.
and it usually doesn't.
No.
Like you
That
don't really
happened.
ever have like an inventory you keep in any Remedy game.
That happened
No.
to Alan Wake all the time.
Yeah. And so it's interesting to me that they continued that thread here, but then instead of having ammo over, they're like, well, fuck ammo. Like, just
Yeah.
have infinite ammo with a slight recharge.
Just magazines.
Yeah, so
It's-
you
it's-
can't just keep shooting forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But You could kind of.
Yeah, so the gun, the service weapon does generate its own ammunition. You just it basically has a cooldown before it refills again.
Yes.
And I think in terms of gameplay, it helps with keeping up the speed and intensity of the combat.
Yeah, because I've noticed the way I tend to do it, especially when I was fighting Hartman at the end, because you're really just trying to, with Hartman, you're just trying to pump as much damage as you can and as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So I'd usually unload the service weapon, the grip, the revolver one. Then as that would cool, I'd pick something up, throw it at him. Pick something else up, throw it at him. By then, I'm
swap
fully
back and
refilled.
forth, yeah.
Unload again, you know what I mean? Or I'd shoot the sticky bombs on him, throw something else on him, switch to the revolver.
That's what
you know, and
I
then-
was doing the,
yeah.
the bombs.
What form of the service weapon? And we should say the service weapon just it I think you mentioned yesterday. It's like blocks.
all
It
geometric
just,
shapes, yeah.
It just forms a new shape.
It's
and
mostly, I think, at its core, it's just a pistol grip. And then
It is effectively, and
everything
then
around
it seems like the whole
forms.
barrel and everything changes
Yeah.
around that. Yeah.
and it's a really cool design. And
Super
and
cool.
someone mentions like, yeah, that's the service weapon, but it didn't used to look like that. So I'm assuming it alters from director to director.
Yeah, because it seemed like they implied that because yesterday I inadvertently referenced the fact that Thor's hammer was potentially, you know what I mean, and altered, was a service weapon at one point. You know, and Excalibur was the service weapon at
Yeah.
one point, and now this is what it is.
And
It takes the appropriate form.
For the time it's in.
For the time that
and
it's
the
in,
game
yeah.
does go on to in the foundation describe that they don't know the origins of the service weapon. It just shows up, and I do think it's very interesting because I replayed the intro of the game yesterday. The service weapon comes down to you from above, just like the revolver comes to you
Does it?
in
You
Alan
don't-
Wake.
You don't just pick it up from, like when you go through the astral plane?
When you're in the astral plane for the first time, the first little test you have is navigating to an area, and then it comes down to you, and it's just very similar to the way that Zane, like in his beam of light, sends you down
The revolver.
the revolver in
okay.
Alan Wake.
I
It's
hadn't-
like the
I
same
hadn't
fucking
considered
scene.
It's true.
But which forms did you guys rely on the most? What were your favorites?
I pretty much only used grip, shatter, and pierce.
Yeah.
So the pistol or revolver, the shotgun, I loved the shotgun, and the sniper, the charge shot thing, because that Pierce has some specific ones that you can get that zoom in your view, like mods that you can get for it to zoom in your view. So I used it as a sniper, and I also loaded it with a bunch of damage mods so that like when I hit stuff, if I hit them, they're gone.
Yeah, and it's I found it better for taking down like big enemies.
It's
Like the
specifically
higher
the
level, like
flying
big guys.
telekinesis
Because if you can
guys.
headshot them, that's like
Oh,
half
the
their health
headshot
bar half the
damage.
time.
Yeah. Much like in Alan Wake, the pistol just is awesome. It feels good to use. You can modify it as you need to, but it's powerful. Shatter, even when I damage boosted it, as like this is something I think you talked about. Even when I added damage boost to it, it didn't seem as reliable. You know what I mean?
Not the best shotgun.
No, I really enjoyed
and
it.
I'm usually a shotgun guy in games.
In games,
like, that's
yeah.
usually
Precisely.
my like I'm either melee or up close. I don't
Yeah.
like I've never been into stealth or you know all that
that was
stuff.
very much my play style going into Control. Once you know you developed enough to get that kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
I'd like pistol you if I was far away, but then I'd get up to you, I'd switch over to the shatter, and I'd just start blasting. And I really had a good time dashing around. It really felt like Doom. But yeah, the other ones, the grenade guys, and I really tried to use the SMG a ton, but like it felt like it did no damage, no matter how much I boosted it with like even the highest level mods. Which ones do you use?
I primarily used grip. Obviously, I stuck with grip. And for the bulk of the main game, I'd swap between grip and pierce, or grip and charge. And charge was mostly when I'd get to like bigger, you know what I mean, event. Like there are a lot of people, clearly like a mini boss or a boss fight or a culmination. Like that's when I was like, okay, we're going to charge. But then I swapped charge out for surge the moment I got surge in the expansion, because it was just so much better.
It reminded me of the remote mines from GoldenEye,
Yeah. And
which were so much fun.
I got 2 upgrades too for different guns that I thought
Proximity mines.
right, because I wanted to love the shatter. I wanted to love shatter. I wanted to try to make it good to use the shotgun. You know
Me
what
too.
I mean? To get right
I
in the
tried.
face.
I tried to level it up.
I got minus 100 projectile spread. You know what I mean? So that it's just a tight cluster of all of it. I got like
Fuck you
damage
up,
against
yeah.
armor, base damage. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
all that
that's pretty
stuff.
much what I put
and
on as
nothing
well.
doing. And even with I wanted to like Charge more as well once I got Surge, but Surge was just so much better than Charge. I got a mod for Charge that increases projectile speed by 400%. So you're effectively
bananas.
shooting it at the same speed as the bullet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And still, I think Pierce, Grip, and Surge were the three best ultimately. Because main game, I was primarily switching through Grip and Pierce.
Yeah.
I felt that Shatter was more of a finisher.
I guess, but even then, it felt extraneous. It just felt
Yeah.
like unnecessary. You know what I mean?
Well, you can only hold 2.
Yes.
So basically, you can select the 6 different mods, but you can only equip 2 at a time.
Yeah,
and hot
there's
swap
kind of, and you
between
can
them.
kind of work around that because all you have to do is hit back, and you can switch out which weapon you have equipped. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which takes you out of the game a little bit, but you're kind of effectively carrying all 6 of them on it.
Right. Yeah. I just
Yeah.
mean you can only hot swap.
Yeah,
Without
you can
pausing.
quick select between 2.
I only used grip pretty much the entire
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Pretty much only grip, and then just using a lot of like my abilities as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh man.
Once or twice I used Pierce for some of the like flying enemies later in AWE
yeah,
and
it's
stuff.
super
So
helpful
like,
with the
oh,
flying
you know,
enemies.
Because they'll dodge your launches.
yeah.
They'll dodge a number of your launches.
You can
Yeah, you
get it
can
over.
eventually get it, but it's frustrating.
It is, yeah.
Once
it
you
is,
get the
yeah.
multi-launch, they have a hard time dodging 3. so that was
That's
very,
what I was saving up
It was
for.
very validating.
I had to spend
really,
it all on energy.
I highly recommend. You should max
Do you
your
think
health.
do you think we all use launch primarily as our
I love
I think
it.
ability?
everyone
We
uses
like,
the hell out
yeah,
of it.
Yeah,
everyone.
and it's
good.
too. It's I was trying
It's
to
so
explain
OP.
this to you when I first was playing the game, just like
how it
how
feels?
it doesn't feel like anything else. It's
really doesn't.
Really, in terms of control, it's like one of the smoothest, most playable games I've ever touched.
It's so beautiful in so many, like, smooth is a perfect word, because it's seamless.
And the biggest complaint I've seen about the combat is that basically you go in, you use launch, and it's kind of repetitive, and it's like, well, maybe.
It never was for me.
I didn't feel that way, but I could see someone getting into that mode.
Yeah, and I also don't get how that's not every game. Yeah,
Right.
I hate when people say the combat feels a little repetitive by the end, and you're like, okay, but I mean, like, it's a first-person shooter. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's,
Yeah,
It's
what
like
do
you
you
either
what do you-
like the challenge or you don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like, and with Control, it's like they keep telling you the idea is like keep moving, don't stop moving. You know what I mean? Keep.
Well, hey, that thing I was just about to say, never mind. So I kind of want to just like try to reel this in.
Yeah.
Good luck.
In terms of the AWE DLC, a lot of interesting information. We do basically leave it with there's going to be another Bright Falls AWE. We know there are FBC agents in Bright Falls that have been monitoring the situation ever since
one of them has
2012.
a name that I don't remember, but I'm
I think
pretty sure.
Jimenez.
yeah,
yes.
Jimenez. Mhm.
We also know that Alex Casey does exist and is looking for Alan Wake
Yeah.
and is in contact with the FBC. We also know that
One guy's feet have started talking to him.
One guy's feet
he has
started
to quit
talking.
something.
Alice
yeah.
is also in contact with the FBC.
Alice, so
She
the
has a
FBC
line.
and the FBC is being monitored, or Alice is being monitored by the FBC as well.
Amicably, it seems like.
Well, she's being surveilled.
Yeah, she like voluntarily assisted them and
Right,
went
but
in,
she's also been in the dark place. She is tainted,
Altered-
in a
altered
paranatural
entity.
way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's hostile, but I don't know if it's amicable because I don't know if she is aware
may-
that
Yeah,
she's
she
being
might not even know.
surveilled.
May not be
Maybe she
aware, you're
assumes
probably
it.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But-
I mean, I'm sure she
Anyways.
already assumes that she's being
Yeah.
watched anyway because she knows
Yeah.
that Mr. Scratch is watching her. She doesn't know who Mr. Scratch is, but she knows it's a very wrong version of Alan.
And I believe in, and I don't mean to derail you so much, but I
Again.
think in American Nightmare, it is referenced that Alice was aware of people saying that they had Alan sightings. Don't touch me.
bugging me.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's also aware that she is
Seen
thought
Alice.
she
She's
saw
seen him as well. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. All right.
But he and he even says like in American Nightmare that he's going to become more and more bold over time. That he's really going to take his time fucking with her, and really make everyone feel good and comfortable before he really strikes and reveals his true nature. That he was going to first appear almost as an apparition, and then eventually be like, "Look, I'm back. I'm Alan Wake," and then be like, "Oh, now I'm going to kill you. You know, just arbitrarily whenever he decided.
Yeah.
The other thing that we find out at the end of the AWE expansion, if you find a secret room, which I don't know, this was a very convoluted secret.
Yeah, man, I'm so disappointed in myself. I got so close, I think, to figuring this out, but I gave up. So
You got to follow the puzzles through.
yeah, man.
Which one was this?
So,
So
there's.
this is. Do you want to take the reins?
Well,
on it?
I want to pull up what it actually says. So in Alan Wake's American Nightmare, there is a song that plays. There's another musical set piece set to an Old Gods of Asgard song.
Oh, okay.
Just like at the stage at the farm.
And like at the ashtray maze and
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's like a motif that keeps appearing in these games. So Old Gods of Asgard have a song in Control called Take Control. And like in American Nightmare, there is a section with some backward speech. I think it's interesting that, the song was included on their greatest hits album. I'm wondering if it's like a new track. A lot of greatest hits are like, and one new song.
Yeah.
You know?
Which you can find the album art for in the Ordinary Dump.
Oh, okay.
I think it's lodged under a car or something.
What people think this says is, in their drunken, fevered state, seeing double, profoundly, the pyramid in the stolen file becomes a spruce tree. I think that has something to do with what you'll find out later in the Foundation about the history of the oldest house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Possibly taking other forms throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
It's this brutalist building, this office building now from the 1960s till today.
But that wouldn't have fit.
If it's this timeless structure, maybe
Yeah.
it was also at one point just a fucking tree.
That people gathered underneath and yeah.
Or a castle, yeah.
The diamond will tell you where 1, 19, 7, 1, 18, 4, 9, 19. Landing on the polar star and rushing onto the red room, find the cord to take you to a secret rendezvous.
Jesus Christ.
And so,
you kidding me? Some of
and
this
so-
shit.
Not all of that is reversed, right? Only
no, that's all reversed.
all of that is that entire verse.
Yeah, then you
Jesus.
reverse it, and that's what you hear.
You say
and,
reverse.
And so, the numbers are a cipher that translates to Asgard is. And what you need to do is you need to take those numbers and you find a secret room. In that secret room, behind a wall, you have to break down a wall, there's a radio playing, Take Control. When you're in that room, you find a second secret wall. You break into there, and there's a clock. And it's a regular clock with Roman numerals, with 12 Roman numerals. What you need to do is take the number sequence that was in the song, translate that to a 24-hour time clock, and then put the clock in those positions, which will then
Sequentially.
open a hole in the floor. It takes you to a red room. Clear out the room. You do the Ocean View Motel thing. There's a cord in there. It takes you to another area where you find like a special mod or whatever, and it's all kind of simple. But what you get at
It's
the
all
end,
kind of simple.
No big deal.
what you get at the end is another hotline call from Alan that talks about how at the end of their time as traveling musicians, Old Gods of Asgard was touring with Barry Wheeler as their tour manager, which we saw back in 2012 in American Nightmare. That's how the game opens.
And they were partying hard, those boys.
Yeah, they would just disappear for days at a time, binge drinking, and every time they'd be weaker and more tired, and they never fully recovered, and they were just going crazy. And Alan and Barry was like, "This sucks. This is unsafe."
Yeah.
After the third time that happened,
True. So
they got three. Meaning they got 3 shows into the tour.
yeah, it was supposed to be their big,
We're back.
their big reunion thing. And he said, "No, I'm pulling the plug."
These guys are gonna die.
And so he took the funds from the tour and from the reunion and opened a retirement facility for them.
Okay.
Valhalla Nursing, whatever it's called.
Yeah, like Valhalla Nursing Home or something like that. And kind of like let them live out their days in peace
Yeah.
in this nursing home. And so, it puts a little bow on what happens with
Tor.
Barry and Tor and
Right.
Tor and
Odin?
Odin,
Odin, yes.
which is nice.
Yeah.
So we know that Barry has stayed working. We know that Alice is under surveillance. Hartman's dead. Presumably dead.
Yeah, it seemed that way.
I don't know, you know, if not,
pretty brutal.
Hartman is still not ever going to be human again.
No, he's not going to be back in reality anytime soon. You know, no one
And
has
it does
replaced him.
seem that Alan, you know, from the way he speaks about it, he's set up all the things he'd need to
Get back.
engage in the next. Someone pounding on my window.
That's what it sounded. Somebody's put a ladder right up to your window.
I'm on like the third floor here.
You guys in here?
It's everything.
Hey, you talk about Control. I love that game.
It's everything he'd need to put the next step of the hero's journey in place. You know, return.
If we could return to this puzzle, just to give my personal experience on it, I found that secret room. Once Matt mentioned at one point that there's walls that you can blast through.
Yeah.
That lead to a hidden room that are mostly unmarked. So once I learned that that was a thing that was in this game, I was punching every wall, man. Like I probably punched most of the walls.
And it's so funny because I don't know if you guys ever played like Wolfenstein way back in the day.
The original, no.
Yeah.
Not personally, but I've watched it. Yeah. Just with like the.
None of my
Doom-
friends. It's a. I need friends who have played. I need friends my age.
Yeah, so you need friends in their 30s.
You have an action button like you do in most FPS games. You press action against a wall, and it might open a secret wall.
Yeah.
And so what you would do in these games, because they were often never marked, is you just go. That's the sound you make when you hit action against an
Right.
object that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Just test, because and the walls are, you know, if everything is still kind of like on a grid, so you know X number of pixels wide, and so you just go
And you just
Literally
along the
yeah.
entire wall,
Just scan
and
it.
it was like I was like, man, this is so old school with the like I'm just scanning walls for
Yeah.
secrets. I haven't done this, you know,
20 years.
since 1993 when I was playing Wolfenstein.
Yeah. So that's exactly how I was doing it, and I found this first room. It's in it's the something passage.
There's like a
the
twisted passage where there's been a seemingly a somewhat permanent building shift in these offices where they just fucked it up.
Yeah, and there's one of those death balls.
There's an astral spike.
Oh, yeah.
Death
so-
Boys.
I found it, and I was like, cool. And then there's like this cool, like there's an entire office section that's flipped vertically.
Yeah.
And you have to navigate that. Like you literally jump onto it, like through the entrance, and then you go up and whatever. And I was like, this is cool. And then I found the radio, and it played "Take Control," and I'm like, there's no way, like no other radio plays this song. Most of them play Ati's song. The actor that plays Ati actually sings that song. Like, I don't know if that's obvious, but he performs that, and he phenomenal singer.
Yeah, I looked him up. He's a very prolific actor
He's
Yeah.
a very
in
famous.
Finland, which
Finnish
which
actor.
means piss. But
I wouldn't
no,
say that.
I read something like in like 2018 or something. Like he was like in every Finnish film that was produced.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew that he was famous, but I didn't
That is-
realize
that
was
is
the
prolific.
case.
But it makes me wonder how many are produced. Really, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Troll Hunter. That might be Swedish. Anyway, so I found that first room. I noticed that the radio played "Take Control," and I knew that it was probably the only one in the game. So I was like, okay, that has some sort of significance. But I was like, well, I'm already in the secret. Maybe there was like a little item crate. I opened that up, and I was like, all right, cool, that was it. And I left. And like, oh, I hate myself for doing it, because if I had found that, I don't know, I kind of believe that if I had found that second room and I found the clock, since going back to Alan Wake, I reversed the audio and I scanned through the songs, the Old Gods of Asgard, and I looked for significance. I know I'm making the dots. I know, I'm really, who's the guy from Always Sunny with the meme where
That's
he's,
Charlie, yeah.
yeah, I'm that guy.
Pepe Silva.
We both are. I had scanned it, and I was planning on going through the song, and I eventually did. I kind of think that I might have been able to solve that fucking puzzle if I had gone to that second room, because
Maybe.
I connected the dots that Take Control is playing on that radio, and I had since scanned and planned to like analyze that song too. I probably would have gotten lost in that you had to transcribe it from military time to a 12-hour time thing. But like,
Yeah, that's.
I could have gotten. I feel like I would have gotten so close.
I feel like you would have found the clock and been like, "What the fuck?" I do stuff to this clock. It doesn't do anything.
I think
Like with
maybe.
the TVs in the furnace, your pea brain couldn't handle it.
No, for me, I think that would have been I would have had more puzzle pieces, and I would have been like, there's something here.
It would have
And I
been
would have
more.
done that
Would have
move
been more
again.
clearly a puzzle.
I think so. To me, in my experience. So
I didn't even know.
Hypothetically, we don't know. But
Yes, but I
Yeah.
hate
But,
myself for being so close.
I hate you for other reasons.
It gives you a sick mod though. The mod it gives you a personal mod that restores a little bit of your health every time you dash.
Oh, that's pretty tight.
That
Which
is
when I got that, and I
incredibly
was just like,
useful.
when I was battling, I was just like dash, 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 dash,
Yeah,
dash.
it
'Cause
changes-
I had full
Yeah.
energy.
If I could have
changes
used that against
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually I did, and it helped a lot.
I bet.
Those
I
super
fucking bet.
secrets give you those ridiculous
I
mods
think I
that-
might have had the hardest time fighting Hartman because I
Mm.
spent such little time going through the side missions
Mm-hmm.
that I'm on the second health rung. After I upgraded my energy, I was on the 4th energy rung.
Jesus.
The only thing I have all the way down is push.
Oh,
Like, everything else is 2 to 3.
I didn't use push at all until this most recent playthrough, and I was like, actually, this is pretty sick.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why. Like when I got it, my first playthrough, I might have upgraded it to the
Is that the
once.
melee attack?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking.
Oh no, sorry, not push.
Oh.
I apologize. I
Launch?
keep calling
Launch?
it kinesis, and I know that's not what it's called. So I tried to remember the name and got it wrong.
Well, they call it
Well, what, it's not.
parakinesiology.
Is it called push? I don't know. Wherever you're
Launch.
doing a push move.
Oh, that might be called
Yeah.
push. I don't know.
But
Honestly,
launch is the one I upgraded fully. Everything else I pretty much ignored. I had 2 health, you know what I mean? So my,
Yeah.
my health bar is still this big, you know what I mean? So I might have had the most difficult time going up against Hartman.
I wanted
So-
to break my
Potentially.
computer
There's-
as it was. I can't imagine. How
There's one other secret in the game that I think is more complicated than this clock puzzle.
Is more complicated than the clock puzzle?
Yeah, it's in the foundation, and I'm curious once we discuss the foundation if you guys will have gotten any deeper into it. Because I tried, I got like a third of the way through and was like, I'm not gonna look it up because I don't care. I could not fucking do it. I'm sure if I like made it my sole intent for a while, but it's not the kind of thing that you're going to solve entirely through casual playing or
Okay.
even through focused playing. I don't think you would easily find it. It's a very, very complex multi-part puzzle where it's like, you ever get a Sudoku where you're like, cool, bam, 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 and then you're like, well, now I'm stuck. Where it's like, there's a couple parts you'll get pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything.
No. Okay.
I played all the way. I thought I played through everything on Foundation. I don't think we've talked about this, so I don't
The
know.
cats.
Oh yeah. Fuck that. I can't do it.
Oh. Anyway, I think we need to wrap things up. Is
Yeah.
there anything else about the AWE or about any questions about all the shits that's going on between Alan and...
I don't know if I could ever ask enough questions.
Yeah.
Frankly. So
So I won't.
So yes, I won't. No, it was all in all. I think the AWE was a really fulfilling and very full expansion, and even though it definitely raised a lot more questions for me, I'm really like happy that they did this. You know what I mean? Because it was very, it was just super satisfying.
Yeah.
Super satisfying to see all this stuff and to get some answers and to kind of get a little bit of like maybe 2 years is their expected release date for Alan Wake the sequel. You know what I mean? Or God knows, but. It was just really cool. It was a nice break from the regular game with the horror aspects and stuff, but it was super cool. They did a good job. Remedy does a really good job with their expansions and making them not feel like just a continuation of the game, but not feel like a totally separate thing.
And adding enough new content because the DLCs they also add a bunch of new mods for weapons. And
Yeah, and they
personal
add
mods that have like
like I found
effects.
so many Prime mods. And also
Yeah.
in Alan Wake, it's like you suddenly get like the ultra heavy duty lantern, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like there's new guns that you'll get and things like that.
and it builds on it and it feels natural.
Yeah, really fucking good. Really.
AWE really rocked. I think and Foundation. Spoiler alert, it's also great. I'm trying to think if there's anything that really stuck out as like I want to know what's up with Kirkland because I don't recall him dying.
No, he resigned.
He resigned.
He
but
resigned months before the Hiss invasion.
much like you know the Mafia, like I don't or
It seems like, but I
Yakuza,
mean,
I don't think you really ever resign.
Well,
Like, you're
Breaker,
always-
It's like, what about Frank Breaker?
resigned.
He did, but he's permanently acting for the rest of his life as a guy that like I don't know. I don't know if it's expected of
I
him.
would think of it this way. He resigned, and it was under you know, was really in bad.
At a bad,
bad terms?
circumstance.
Yeah, on bad terms.
Mm-hmm.
On bad. I was like, in bad terms. He was on bad terms with the current director.
Mm-hmm.
Now that Trench is out, I think it leaves room for Kirkland to possibly reconnect in some way if he because it didn't seem like Kirkland resigned because he thought what Trench and the FBC were doing was so dangerous and wrong.
Yeah.
He thought if I, the head of investigations, resigns, this might be enough to like motivate people to actually
There was
change
some-
things here,
yeah,
and it
he had
wasn't.
He had a
Yeah.
correspondence thing that you could read that said, I think you could actually read the actual,
His resignation letter.
to
Yeah.
Trench.
Yeah.
And so seeing that Trench is out of the picture, and the fact at the end of the game, we don't know where Darling is. We don't know where Kirkland is, and we can presume they're both alive. I think that if Darling were dead, you would have heard from him on the hotline.
Yeah.
You'd hope. Yeah, you'd
Yeah.
imagine.
Especially because the Hedron resonance, which is of one with Polaris in some way, if Hedron was talking to,
Darling or
if the
Darling.
resonance was both in communication with Darling and Jesse, you think they would at some point go, hey,
You'd know.
yeah, and
Yeah.
also it is strange that Hedron would warn Darling about the hiss, but not mention Jesse. If Hedron was aware of Jesse.
Yeah, there's a few things that I can't tell if they're plot holes / contradictions, and honestly, that seems like the less likely option because of how in
does.
depth it is, or if it's just something that I'm not understanding. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if there's a deeper reasoning behind it, where it's like because it seemed like Polaris, while part of Hedron was disconnected from Hedron.
Absolutely.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So maybe that's why there was no opportunity for the two of you to communicate.
Yeah,
you know
because
what I mean?
I do think that if Darling knew that Jesse was coming, he wouldn't have been so panicked at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
I think that it does seem to be understood by the community that there is that disconnect between Polaris and
Hedron.
Hedron. Though they may have, there's things saying that perhaps they were the same entity. I think we talked about this last
And
time.
it
Yeah,
could be as simple as Hartman in the Darkness, where they're so far removed from each other that you know what I mean.
There's, you know,
Yeah,
they're
just a
doing
weak
their own-
connection.
Yeah.
doing their own thing. So yeah, I'm really interested to see where they go with how much Alan has had influence on this world. Learning about the investigations department was tantalizing. Everything I learned about the bureau, I just want more. I think it's so interesting. It feels so respectful, if that makes sense. It doesn't. It presents the information to me in a way that it doesn't feel like I'm a dummy. Like they don't expect. Like, they're not spoon feeding me baby stuff. They're like here's some shit that is enough for you to start digesting, but they give you enough nuggets. It's just, I feel respected as
pieces,
a fan.
it's pieces of a whole picture.
Yeah.
And, if you think of it like literally like a puzzle piece, like you might see at any one corner of the piece part of a larger image. And almost no information you come across in the game is completely separate,
Yeah.
So anytime you pick up one bit of information, you might not even know it yet, but you're getting a bit of a hint as to how it links to something else. And
just
as
like
you
the
create these links, you
feet
create
thing.
this entire picture,
like, yeah.
which is really cool because I think that not enough games do that. Not enough games have that much of a full image that they then shatter to a million pieces and go, well, here.
Yeah.
They're all here. Put it together
And it's-
on your own terms.
It's very smart because they kind of set themselves up to really like have an endless well to draw from
Yeah.
Yeah.
for content. Like if you look at it, they could release another Control game and another Alan Wake game.
Yeah.
And then after that, they could probably release something that's like the two of them if they wanted to. I'm sure they could. I haven't played Quantum Break, but I'm sure they could release a sequel to that. You know what I mean? Maybe, depending on how it ends. I don't know anything about it. When did Quantum Break? When did
And
Quantum Break come
Microsoft
out?
could commission it, but I mean, it is left open.
Or a spiritual successor. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
to
but
Quantum
it's,
Break.
you know, with the way it
Sure.
works, it's multiple timelines.
Yeah.
And you could just enter another one and have
Yeah.
a whole new adventure.
Right.
Matter of time. There's a lot of whispers about what the new thing is going to be in the Remedy universe, and it seems like Alan Wake 2 or whatever that will be, as Matt said yesterday, that will be the next thing. But like, as far as what I want next, I'm like, they've talked about Project Condor, which is the next thing. There's only the one image of it released so far.
There's no information on that at all?
No, there's information. It's a cooperative, free-to-play, multiplayer game which will take place in the Control universe in some way.
Okay.
And they're not sure of the distribution model just yet. But I'm imagining it's going to be a team-based multiplayer shooter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Assuming like class-based,
Yeah.
reminiscent of Left 4 Dead.
I would love to see something as their next project, or as their end game project, a game that brings all of the universes ostensibly into one. You're Jesse Faden visiting Bright Falls to respond to the AWE event of Alan Wake
That'd be sick.
returning.
You know,
You know what I
this
mean?
is
And Alex
purely-
Casey, aka Max Payne, is there. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's only speculation, you know, but in Max Payne 2, you do get to play as two different characters. And I know that there were, I think, I could be wrong with this, I believe there were times in Alan Wake where you were going to take on other characters. There were definitely points in Quantum Break where you were supposed to be able to take on multiple characters. And I do think that it's very possible that they're going to find a way to finally, like, incorporate that idea again.
Yeah.
And it would be very exciting to see, you know, taking control of two different protagonists who have two different skill sets,
yeah,
like
because-
entirely.
And
Alan is not
effectively,
going to be
like-
effective against the Hiss.
and effectively like 3 separate storylines where each is a protagonist in their own story, but potentially not a protagonist in each other's story.
True.
You know what I mean? Which would create really cool dynamics.
Oh,
I think
that'd be sick. Yeah,
You know?
I'm really worried Alan's going to be a bad guy. I don't know if there's anything leading towards that, especially when
Well,
they
it
have,
could
like,
be.
Mr. Scratch.
It could be that he's the good guy, but in his mind, Jesse's the bad guy because Jesse's trying to bring him in. You know what I mean? To the
Yeah, or-
FBC, and then
or
God
maybe
only knows. And
the things that Alan had to orchestrate for his escape kind of like leave his moral compass different.
Yeah, I
than-
do feel like at one point he says that sometimes there needs to be casualties. I'm not sure if I actually read that or not, but
That's some hard shit.
I don't know if I'm making that
Sounds
up.
like
I
a
really
body
feel like I
count
read that. I
reference.
tried to find it again
it
recently.
seems in line with what he's having to do. You know what I mean?
You got a big old bug crawling down your shoulder.
Oh, what's up, doggy?
Well, anyway, we could bug out all day, but I think we'll wrap that up
We
here.
should talk
and,
about the AWE DLC.
Stay tuned for more videos from us. We have plenty more of these I've played style discussions. We will be coming back one more time to talk about Control. We'll be discussing the Foundation DLC, which gets into the roots of the FBC and the oldest house, and talks a lot more about the, not only the history of the oldest house, but the history and interpersonal dynamics of the FBC and how it became what we know it as today. And we'll cover other games too. It's not going to be a Remedy-based channel forever.
Don't
it's
worry.
it's just this month of October, and after that, we'll never touch another Remedy game again. Hopefully,
Never again.
never again.
Yeah.
Bye. Oh, God. There we go.
It did land it on you. I was hoping you would have panicked and would have
Save
had a
him.
better response.